How you doing? Good luck. Only a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Today is Monday, January 2023. We'd like to call the meeting to order. We'd ask for everyone to take their seats. If we could call to order this meeting, and if the clerk could please take the roll of attendance.
Councilman Ferry,
Present.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Here.
Councilwoman Jermaine,
Present.
Councilman Donegan,
Present.
Councilman Campiano,
Present.
Councilman Paplaskas,
Present.
Councilman Riley, Council Vice President Vargas,
Present.
Council President Marino.
Present. And now if we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I understand the meeting minutes, the last meeting have not yet been circulated, so I would ask for a motion to continue the approval of those minutes.
Motion to continue.
Second.
Rosalba, if you can please take the roll.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilman Donegan,
Yes.
Councilman Campiano,
Yes.
Councilman Paplaskas,
Yes.
Councilman Riley, Councilwoman, Council Vice President Vargas,
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Yes. Next item, public acknowledgements and commendations. We do not have anything on there this evening. We will move next to public hearings and public comment. At this time, we will take public comment on any docketed items this evening. I would ask the public to please keep their comments to no more than 4 minutes. And we will take public comment in chambers first, and then we will check with Zoom. So if anyone here from the public would like to speak on any docketed matters this evening, now is your opportunity.
that us to talk about the laundry facility?
That is a docketed matter, yes. Okay. It's one person at a time. Name and address at the podium, please, and 4 minutes per person. Thank you.
So the residents of Edgewood, yeah,
Please,
my name is Justin Cairns. I live at 131 Massasoit Avenue, Cranston, Rhode Island, 02905. The Edgewood Laundry Facility has machines inside their facility running the commercial operation that is creating shaking in all of the nearby residents' homes, putting cracks in walls, knocking things off of shelves, putting cracks in windows, and we'd like to have something done about this. Thank you.
Good evening, James Kelleher Esquire, 55 Alhambra Circle in Edgewood. I would want to point out to the council that several of the neighbors have contacted city officials regarding this situation, and I would say that on behalf of the administration, their response has been remarkably underwhelming and disappointing, to the extent that we've been told, not me personally, but other folks involved, have been told that this is entirely a private matter. It's going to require private civil litigation, and the city has in effect washed its hands of it. And that seems to be based on some divine idea on the part of the city that this is clearly the fault of the laundromat. If it is, I would suggest that the city would be well served to protect its citizens and intervene. But on the chance that it's not the laundromat, it's something else. And there are several properties in the area that are being, as people have said, being damaged by this. And if it's a situation that continues to deteriorate, then we don't know the extent of the damage that will occur. So I was particularly distressed by the fact that my city administration, for which I pay dearly in taxes, seemed to be enormously disinterested. It's also my understanding that at one point when somebody at the, I believe the building officials, or maybe it was minimum housing's office, was required to come out and do their job and inspect, they ended up citing the person who had called to complain, which sounds really vaguely in my legal recollection like retaliation. I hope that's not the case, but if it is, then that city official should know that they'd be personally liable as well as be liable for retaliation in their capacity as an agent of the city. Very, very disappointing, and the city council should be aware of that. Thank you.
thank you.
Good evening, David Burbach, that's B-U-R-B-A-C-H, and I live at 1975 on Broad Street in Edgewood. I'm also here to speak about the laundry situation. Just to give you a little bit of context, I've lived across the street roughly from this commercial laundry operation for about 8 years, and there was no problem until 2 months ago when I don't know whether they upgraded machinery or something failed, but as everybody here will be able to tell you, this was a sudden change that happened about 2 months ago. So it's not that we don't think a laundry can operate there at all. We understand it's a mixed use neighborhood, commercial uses are grandfathered in. Something changed. And we're now suffering vibrations worse than a bus going by or a truck idling in front all day long. I wake up maybe 1 out of every 2 or 3 mornings between 6 and 6:30 a.m. when these vibrations begin. I have things rattling. I teach down at the Naval War College in Newport. I often do video meetings and video lectures. My webcam is now shaky enough sometimes that it poses a problem for me doing this. So this is interfering with my ability to work from home. So this is actually a pretty significant change. And I know other residents feel that they've had plaster cracking, pipes, I'm sure you'll hear from others. But, I'm about 150 feet away from this facility. There are other homes as much as 250 feet away affected. So there might be 15 to 20 homes affected. I know the liquor store next to the laundromat has bottles just about rattling off the shelves. So this is not something that is appropriate for, an A6 residential neighborhood. So we are hoping, while if necessary, we may, we'll certainly look into civil litigation. It certainly seems that this has got to violate some kind of ordinance to promote, to cause this level of nuisance in our homes. So we hope the city is able to help out in some way. Thank you.
My name is Lincoln Cox. I live at 135 Massasoit Avenue. It's directly across the street from the laundry. And this shaking and vibration that we're all feeling only occurs when the laundry is operating, which, by the way, is 5 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and many times on Sundays and holidays. Again, to stress, when the laundry is not there, when they're not operating, there is no shaking of our homes. I too have had damage in my home. I had water damage in the ceiling of my dining room. I called a plumber. He cut the area open and found that a joint and some PVC piping had come loose. I asked him what he thought might have caused this. And he said, well, how long has all this shaking been going on? I said, about a year. And he said, well, there you have it. So that repair cost me $500. So we estimate that this nuisance has at least a three block radius around the laundry, and it's affecting many homes within this vicinity. So, and again, I want to stress that this is not some sort of like minor thing, some minor nuisance that we can all just sort of overlook or ignore. It's incredibly intense. It's becoming unbearable, and we all fear now for the long-term structural integrity of our homes. So there are some options the laundry could take. I've looked into it. There's pretty simple options, but they won't listen to us. They'll only listen if they're cited or asked by the city to act on this. It wouldn't take much by them. So we are respectfully asking the council to have this nuisance investigated and abated on behalf of the residents of the neighborhood. Thank you.
My name is Jessie Cero. I live at 53 Berwick Lane. It is my house that was cited after we complained. We did feel that it was retaliation. Instead of coming out and citing the laundromat, which we found out they never got a citation. We got a citation for an unregistered car that was just parked in our driveway. It just was unused. So that was, we moved it, so that was fine. But I have been experiencing this issue for 2 years. I live 2 houses away from the laundromat, but my driveway abuts the property where they park their commercial vehicles. This issue begins at 5:30 in the morning. My son, who's 5, his room looks out onto the laundromat. Every morning he comes into my bed because our home starts shaking. It's like an earthquake all day long. I would invite anybody from the city to come to my house during the day, and you would be shocked at the rattling of my windows. My plants shake inside my house. It is a constant problem. And our home, I notice cracks in our walls. If you're outside, you feel the ground shake. And we live in a great neighborhood. I love our neighborhood. This is not something that the residents of Edgewood should be dealing with. I tried to be a good neighbor to the people that own the laundromat. I told them of this issue. I explained it to them. I said, I understand you're trying to run a business. I respect that, but this is a real issue. And they said it wasn't their problem. They told me that it had nothing to do with them. So if we all can pinpoint the fact that it doesn't happen when they're not in operation, I don't understand how nothing can be done with it by the city. I have complained to the building inspector multiple times and nothing has been done. On top of the shaking, they keep garbage outside their property, no fence, nothing blocking it. They park their trucks where there is a curb. There's no driveway. There's nothing of the sort. There are huge barrels of chemicals outside all the time, not blocked off, not being protected by anything. Their dumpsters overflow. We have had a rat problem in our neighborhood. It's so many problems. The shaking, obviously, being the most hard to deal with one, but hopefully somebody in the council or somebody from the city can take care of this. And I would welcome anybody to come to my house and experience the shaking for themselves.
Good evening. My name is Janet Gilligan, and I live at 87 Alhambra Circle. I would like to point- Okay, there we go. I would like to point out that I have lived for 35 years in this house, a very stable 35 years, until just a few months ago, when my house, which is 3 houses in from Broad Street, started shaking. And the windows and the walls and the doors rattle now. They rattle consistently. There's no schedule to the rattling, but they come regularly at unusual intervals. You never know when it's going to rattle, and you never know how hard it's going to rattle. But for the first time, a few weeks ago, things on top of furniture started moving, small items started moving around. When it first happened, my husband and I had no idea. We were not alone, I found out, and thinking, was there an earthquake? I mean, the bed was shaking. Furniture was shaking in the house. And we found out we were not alone. We found out, as you can see tonight, and with the bad weather and us being Rhode Islanders, this is an impressive show out. I really think it is. We found out that many other people were going through the same thing. Now, it appears to have started at different times for different people. I wonder if that is just your location in terms of how far away you are, if there's something to do with the soil under our particular houses where vibrations carry better or worse one to the other. I don't know. But as of now, when we discovered we were all feeling the same thing, and we started talking, we have identified at least 7 streets in Edgewood that have people impacted by this constant shaking, which does start around 5:20, 5:30 in the morning. And I can see when the light goes on. And that's to me a factor. But right now, we've identified Broad Street, Massasoit, Doylestown, Glen, Berwick, and Sefton, and Alhambra, all streets that we've talked to people that are impacted by this. It is an Edgewood problem right now. It is the Edgewood problem. That makes it the Cranston problem, because Jim Kelleher is correct. The city has just told us it's not our problem, it's your problem. But we don't accept that, and we don't believe that, because it doesn't make any sense. Now, it's true, people commonly believe that it is the laundry that is causing this problem. And there are several factors, you've heard some of them tonight, about why they believe that. But it is time for the city of Cranston to investigate what is going on. Now, I understand that just a few weeks ago, the city did an investigation. It was a cursory investigation. They did nothing but walk in, look at the machines, say, oh, they're the same size as any other machines that were there previously, so they're all grandfathered in. Well, we don't think that's enough. We think that there must be a thorough investigation with scientific, fine, we want to know. We don't want to say it's this and you must treat it as if it is this. We want to know what's happening. And once we can all figure out, or you can figure out and tell us, then the obligation is, of course, on the city to ameliorate the problem. And whether that is by forcing or compelling changes in the business, if that's where it is, your ordinance, our city ordinance certainly doesn't allow any licensed business in the city to destroy the quiet enjoyment of our homes. To most of us, and I would guess to most of us in this room, our homes are our major asset. That is what we work for, what we try to keep above all else. And I just know that the city will follow its duty and obligation to protect its residents and to find out what this is. If it's not the laundry, fine. No one here is out gunning for the laundry. But here's the problem. If it's not the laundry, we most likely have a much more serious problem, because that would mean something is underground. Because those of us who have been there for decades have never experienced this before. The trucks and buses come every day. It's not a problem. Occasionally the airplane goes over, not a problem. Something has changed. We believe it's the laundry. It deserves a thorough investigation. Thank you.
My turn. My name is Stephen Wynn. I live at 127 Massasoit, and like all my neighbors, my house shakes. I came here this evening with an idea, perhaps not to blame the laundry, and give you guys the opportunity to send out investigators and to look at it for yourselves. It seems though, based on what some of my neighbors who I've not met before, I just heard their testimony this evening, that it's the laundry. So if I could ask you to commit some funds to do a full investigation to find out exactly what it is. As the lady who got up here before me said, if it's not the laundry, we have a much bigger problem. It's got to be dangerous. It has got worse in the last year. I've lived there for 3 years now. If you could have seen a video of me running around my apartment being like, what is that? What is that? Oh my God, the house is shaking. I thought it was my downstairs neighbors on their exercise machine. And then Lincoln's like, hey, can I ask you a question? It's like, yeah, what is it? Does your house shake? I was like, yeah, and the joy in his eyes, he's like, oh my God, I'm not going crazy. Everyone has a shaking house. And the long-term effects of our houses shaking has got to be, I mean, everyone who owns their home is worried. It's not going to get any better. Some of these houses are 100 years old and they're on stone foundations. One of my neighbors said earlier that they had a porch put on their house. They had to raise it 6 inches because their porch shrunk. So yeah, I mean, I think I've taken up my 4 minutes. Thank you. Yeah, I hope you can figure out some solutions for us all, because clearly I think all of us are here for the same thing, right? Most of us, right? All of us are here for the same thing. So thank you.
My name is Victor Lavenstein. I live at 119 Massasoit Avenue. That's Lavenstein. I have lived in my house since 1997, I believe. 96, thank you. When you get to my age, you begin to get a little forgetful. At the same time. So I like to think that I've been around a while. And I just like to support the general observation that what we are all feeling has only started to occur recently. And for it, like everyone else, I felt this shaking going on. I'm going, is that my heating system? Is there something wrong in my house? And I'm also running around all over the place. I'm going down in the basement, putting my hands on various heating elements and plumbing elements and trying to figure what's going on. Is it my refrigerator? No, it's none of those things. As all my friends have said, you know, we've talked to other folks in the area. Is your house? Yes. Suddenly relief. I know I'm not crazy. I have not until now heard that the city of Cranston has said that this is not their problem. I hope that is not the case. But I would submit to you that what is causing our houses to shake and probably putting cracks in and causing things to rattle and as I understand, causing some plumbing to come loose. I would submit that that means that certain elements of city owned property, whether it be a sidewalk or a street or anything else, is probably getting damaged as well. And if plumbing is becoming a problem, I can only shudder to think what might happen if a gas line comes loose. I just leave you all with that thought. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Chris Ruggieri. I'm at 88 Glen Ave. I live right behind Lincoln on Glen Avenue. We have experienced this problem for the last year. We moved in about a year ago. My wife had said the house was shaking and I thought she was crazy until we experienced it together. It wakes us up in the morning. It keeps us up in the afternoons when we're trying to nap. We're very, very concerned about our brand new home. And this meeting tonight is eye-opening. I didn't realize how many people were having this issue. So I just want to reiterate that my dishes shake, my plants shake, my windows shake, and we are very, very concerned about liquefaction of the soil causing our foundations to change. And we're very concerned about it. And again, to the point of a gas line or a sewer line, we're very, very concerned about it. So hopefully the city council can do us right here. Thank you.
Oops. Yep.
Hi, my name is Donna Golden, Goldin. I live at 123 Massasoit Avenue. And my neighbors here have so wonderfully described the situation. You know, I'll pick on my husband a little bit here and just say that he loves to tap, you know, to music, and it drives me batty. Now I have that all day long, this vibration that's just going on through the house. I'll be sitting there 6 o'clock in the morning with my coffee, you know, looking at the news, and then all of a sudden, you know, so the problem has been really significant for everybody. And I appreciate what everyone has said. So my question to the city council is, I've looked at everybody and I see that you're taking this matter very seriously. When and how do we find out what will be done? Thank you.
And Tom, if we can check on Zoom, if there's any public comment as well.
Sam Brusco.
Hello, Sam Brusco, 11 Alhambra Circle. My house doesn't shake, but I'm a bit farther than the other residents who are in attendance tonight. And I became aware of this from social media on nextdoor.com. And I looked up some stats regarding these commercial washing machines. They weigh in excess of 1,000 pounds. So it's like a compact car. They spin between 1,000 and 1,200 RPM. That's 20 times a second. And in that spin cycle, what I found was that they create over 300 Gs. So if laundry goes in at 100 pounds, and with the size of them, that's entirely possible, it weighs 100,000 pounds when it gets up to speed. And humans pass out at 4 or 5 Gs, you know, except fighter pilots. The other thing I wanted to mention was, yeah, from the chatter on the social media, it's all in a radius of that of the laundry. And what I think it is that either it's happening during the spin cycle, and it's either an unbalanced load or it's too much laundry in the load, or one or two large items is, like on one side and everything else is on the other side. It's just unbalanced. The other possibility is that there is a broken suspension spring, or a broken strut. And I know this because it happened to my machine a few years ago. I was able to fix it, but it was not easy. And it was, when it broke, it was rattling like the devil. So that's all I got. Thank you.
See no further public comment.
Hello, my name is Winnie Van Horn Pryor, and I live at 94 Alhambra Circle. So just to put my 2 cents in, we are getting cracks in our ceiling. We are, let's see, about 2 houses away from the laundromat. We're across the street, across Broad Street. And we're getting cracks in our ceiling. Our neighbors who are right on Broad Street, it shattered or cracked one of their main windows. It's like a big window pane, and it cracked it. She's not here today because she had fallen and broken her shoulder in an unrelated incident, but I figured I would represent her. The other thing is my son works at the liquor store that is attached to the laundromat. He said the bottles totally rattle and it feels like it's internal. So I just figured I would share that too.
Thank you, and we will now close public comment.
There is one additional on
There's one
Zoom.
additional, okay.
Leah Deslatus.
Hi there. My name is Melanie Perez and, oh, sorry.
No, we're on Zoom
Oh,
right
I'm
now.
sorry. I don't
Sorry,
know
yep.
what- Sorry.
They have themselves muted. To the member of the public on Zoom, if you can unmute yourself.
Hi, my name is Leah Deslandis. I live at 1999 Broad Street. I reside on the 2nd and 3rd floor of this house. I have noticed lots of shaking. I have mirrors and pictures on the wall that shake, and my television also shakes. And actually just about 15 minutes ago, I noticed a shaking of my television. It happens at all different times of the day, and I just wanted to put that out there for everybody to know that it seems to happen early in the morning and even into the evening. Thank you.
See no further public comment on Zoom.
And then, yes, no, in chambers is different. We're all set, but Zoom is closed and now public comment in chambers. Miss, you have a comment? You can come up to the podium. Yeah. If you can please just state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Okay, so my name is Melanie Perez and my address is 1968 Broad Street. And I also feel shaking. It's been shaking at night though also. So it's like, it's very confusing to where it's coming from. I do worry about my house and the stability of my house because it feels as though like I have metal pictures hanging and I can hear them clinking like, and I worry about just the structure of my house. And I don't know if any of the things that are happening in my house could be because of that, but I am two buildings away from the laundromat. And I do hear it and sometimes it wakes me up at night. So that's all I'd like to really say about it.
Thank you. We will now close public comment. Before moving on to the resolution, I do want to state just to the public that this issue of the Edgewood laundromat is a matter that is on the agenda. The public comment section is not a back and forth. So in terms of the constituent concerns of what's going to be done. We'll be addressing that when we address the agenda item later on this evening, and I'll reserve my comments for that time as well. Okay, thank you. Resolutions this evening. We have a resolution declaring the first week in February to be National Gun Violence Survivors Week, sponsored by Councilwoman Germain, Councilman Donegan, Council Vice President Vargas, and Council President Marino. If I could have a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? If Councilman Germain or one of the sponsors would like to speak this evening? Councilman Donegan.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, everyone, and the sponsors. This evening is a resolution to recognize survivors of gun violence awareness. Over the past couple of years, we've tried to make an emphasis to highlight and bring to the forefront the issue of gun violence, not only as a national issue, but something that does plague our city here in Cranston. There have been numerous incidents of gun violence that have occurred specifically within Ward 3, the area that I represent, over the past couple of years. As you know, I remember Election Day 2020 showing up to one of the polling places, and 3 streets down off of Cranston Street, someone had been killed earlier that morning. So it's something that unfortunately has impacted many lives here in Cranston. We want to commemorate their lives as well as the survivors of gun violence, and continue to make sure that this is something that stays on the top of our minds as we work to ensure the public health and safety of all 80,000 plus residents here in Cranston.
Councilwoman Germain.
Thank you, Council President. Oh, that sounds so good to say Councilwoman President, right? As Council Donegan said, it's unfortunate that we have to bring something to, to survivor. So my hope is one day we can say, oh, we have less and less gun violence survivor. But it's also an opportunity, a privilege to have people who are impacted by gun violence and have the luck to be alive. Last week, something happened in California. How many people that need to be dead? So this is a reminder again for each one of us within the power we have to make sure we do something to decrease gun violence. I cannot say to eradicate gun violence, but there's things we can do to decrease gun violence. So as we propose this resolution to have a week of celebration for those who are still alive, a gun violence survivor is anyone who has personally experienced gun violence, whether you have witnessed an act of gun violence, been threatened or wounded by a gun, or had someone you know and care for wounded or killed by gun violence. So this resolution is just a reminder in our experience to make sure that we think about those who are impacted and who are living with those traumas as well. In Rhode Island, 43 people are killed in acts of gun violence, and nearly 165 more are shot and wounded just in Rhode Island. So I encourage our colleagues to vote yes for this resolution, and to make sure we take a moment each day to see what we can do to stop gun violence in our society, particularly in our community. Thank you.
Council Vice President Vargas.
Thank you, Council
President. I'm in support of this resolution, and obviously I'm one of the co-sponsors on here. And, with everything going on from the West Coast to the East Coast, from what happened even at Monterey Park Sunday night, my heart goes out to the families of the victims and also of the survivors. It echoing what Councilwoman Jermaine had just mentioned, the fact that, every year and each year, we've had to submit a resolution and, commemorating National Gun Violence Survivor Week, is, my heart goes out to the families, but it's truly heartbreaking to know that, there's obviously a lot going on in a country when it has to do with gun suicides, domestic violence, and everything else that's actually noted on this resolution this evening. So I'm in support of this resolution clearly, and I encourage anyone else on the council who would like to be added a co-sponsor to please do so this evening. Thank you.
Councilwoman Renzulli.
Thank you. I would just like to thank the sponsors for bringing this forward, and I would appreciate if I could be added as a co-sponsor. Thank you very much.
Councilman Campiano.
I also would like to be added as a co-sponsor. Thank you.
Councilman Ferry.
Ditto.
Okay. All right. Rosalba, if we could please take the roll.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Rizzuli,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilman Donegan,
Yes.
Councilman Campiano,
Yes.
Councilman Paplaskas,
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas,
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Yes. Next on the agenda this evening is, I'm sorry. Sure, Councilwoman Jermaine.
Oh, thank you. I feel a little sorry. We should thank Mom, Them and Action for their support for this resolution. So I would not feel good if I didn't mention that. And particularly Candace in supporting to have this done.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is report of committees. First is Finance Committee and Chair Councilman Donegan.
Thank you, Council President. Before us on the Finance Committee, we have 3 items. I would urge passage of all 3. The first being resolution authorizing real estate tax abatements.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Clerk, if we can please take the roll.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Rizzuli,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilman Donegan,
Yes.
Councilman Campiano,
Yes.
Councilman Paplaskas,
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas,
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Yes.
Council President, point of order, there was no discussion on that or asked.
Do we need to- Is there any discussion? No. Nope. Moot point, moving on.
Next on the docket, we had the resolution authorizing motor vehicle tax abatements. I would urge passage.
And to approve?
Second.
Any discussion? There being none, please take the roll.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Rizzuli,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilman Donegan, Councilman Campiano,
Yes.
Council Paplaskas,
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas,
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Yes.
Lastly, we had tax interest waiver denials. I would urge passage.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Please take the roll.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Rizzuli,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilman Donegan, Councilman Campiano,
Yes.
Councilman Paplaskas,
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas,
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Yes. Thank you, Councilman Donegan. Next this evening is a Public Works Committee, Council Vice President Chair Lamas Vargas.
Thank you, Council President. Under Public Works Committee, there was only one item, and that was request from Carbonado Group LLC, permit for alteration near historic cemetery CR 030 King Randall Lot. This passed out of committee unanimously, and I urge passage this evening.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Any discussion? There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mazzulli,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilman Donegan.
Yes.
Councilman Campiano,
Yes.
Councilman Paplaskas,
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas,
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Yes. Next on the agenda is the ordinance committee. Council Vice President Chair Lamas Vargas.
Yes, thank you, Council President. On this ordinance committee, we also had one item, ordinance 1222-02, ordinance and amendment of chapter 10, title 32, section 020 of the Code of the City of Cranston, 2005, entitled Motor Vehicles and Traffic, Stop Intersections, enumerated Wrangling Road and Carver Road, sponsored by Mayor Hopkins and Councilwoman Renzulli. This passed out of committee unanimously, and I urge passage this evening.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion on this? For the record, I'd like to just bring to the clerk's attention just a motion to amend that. At the top, it notes Christopher Paplaskas as council president, and it should just be Councilman Marino. Legal counsel, do we need to take a vote on that amendment? Just scrivener's error. Okay, all set. All right, any discussion? Okay, there being none, please take the roll.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilman Donegan,
Yes.
Councilman Campiano,
Yes.
Council Paplaskas,
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas,
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Council President,
Yes.
I was wondering if we could move the audit committee out of order in respect to the people that are here in chambers and the people that are receiving appointments tonight. Then maybe we could do that business first.
We can take a motion to take the agenda out of order to move the audit committee on to after council member communications. If there's a motion,
So moved.
Second.
any discussion? Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilman Donegan, Councilman Campiano,
Yes.
Councilman Paplaskas,
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas.
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Yes. Okay. Next on the agenda this evening is a public comment for any undocketed items. So if the public, any members in chambers or on Zoom that has public comment, now is your opportunity to comment, limited to 4 minutes, and please state your name and address for the record. Is there anyone in chambers that wishes to speak on any undocketed items?
Hi, my name is Josh Plush. I live at 127 Massasoit Avenue. I've lived at my apartment for about a year and a half. My girlfriend and I rent at this apartment, but sorry. We do not, according to our lease, we don't have access to the driveway. And often we have to park on the street unless we coordinate with our neighbor. And in this process, we've received now 3 parking tickets each. And between us, that's $150 just to live on our street, which at this point is kind of ridiculous. So we're just hoping that there could be some sort of parking permit system just created for us or anyone else who's experiencing this problem. Thank you.
Hi, Justin Cairns, 131 Massasoit Avenue. I also have an issue with the parking tickets that are being reported. I don't understand why we cannot park in front of our home overnight. I understand that there's an ordinance between whatever it is, 1 and 7 a.m. for more than 2 consecutive hours, but we live on a residential area and we need to park in front of our own homes. We're not in a commercial area and we should be allowed to park in front of our house overnight. I am not in favor of a parking permit system. That is not the way forward. We have more than enough space to park on our street. A permit system exists so that there are more cars than there are spaces, and so you try to limit the amount of cars in the area. That's not a problem that we have in the city of Cranston. Instead, I propose that the ordinance be changed so that if you are within 1, 2, 3 doors of your own home, when they go to look up your car to give you that ticket, you're able to park in front of your home. Thank you.
Hello again, Stephen Wynn, 127 Massasoit Avenue. Like my neighbors, I agree. Apparently, some of my neighbors that have lived on the, in the area, excuse me, in the area for years, there's a couple of police cars who come around once a year and give parking tickets, and it happens once a year. So everyone's like, you know what, $25, whatever, I don't care, I'll pay it. But it's happened 4 or 5 times in the last 2 or 3 months. And it's not fair for particularly young neighbors who are at school having to pay $25 a night if the cop chooses to come around and put tickets on the cars to park outside. There's plenty of space. You could fit 4 cars down our street. So if there's a way that you could look at that and just, I mean, canceling it is the answer. But if it has to be a permit, so be it. But I don't think we should have to pay to park on our street right outside our house. And people don't have money to spend on parking tickets. People aren't doing anything wrong. They're just parking outside their homes. Thank you.
And Tom, is there any public comment on Zoom?
See no public comment.
At this time, public comment on undocketed items is closed. Next on the agenda is the election and or appointment of city officials. I would just state for the record this evening, the first item is a Scrivener's error, Affordable Housing Commission, the reappointment of Derek Tutt for term to expire on 1/23/2025. That is duplicated appropriately later on in the agenda. So the first item this evening is the Juvenile Hearing Board. First, we have the reappointment of Bernard Kevin O'Connor as an alternate member for term to expire on 12/1/2023 as sponsored by Councilman Poplawskis.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilman Ferry,
No.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilman Donegan,
Yes.
Councilman Campiano,
Yes.
Councilman Paplaskas,
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas,
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Yes. Next item is the appointment of Stephen Cortino to fill the unexpired term of Vincent Turquetta to expire on 12/1/2023. It's actually sponsored by myself.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilman Ferry.
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilman Donegan,
Yes.
Councilman Campiano,
Yes.
Councilman Paplaskas.
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas,
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Yes. Next on the, and I'd like to just congratulate the reappointment of Bernard Kevin O'Connor and the appointment of Stephen Cortino. Next on the agenda is the Board of Contract and Purchase. We have the reappointment of Anthony Mastantuano as appointed by the Minority Leader for a term to expire on January 1/2024, and this is for informational purposes only, as no votes will be taken. Next on the agenda is also for the Board of Contract and Purchase, the appointment of Anne Marie Macaron for term to expire on 1/1/24. That is the council president appointment, and again, for informational purposes with no votes to be taken. Next is the reappointment of Doris Blanchard for term to expire January 1/2024 as a majority leader appointment for informational purposes with no votes to be taken. And next and final for the Board of Contract and Purchase is the appointment of Robert Wilson for term to expire January 1, 2024, as the majority leader appointment for informational purposes with no votes to be taken. And I congratulate them on their appointments and reappointments. Next is the City Council grant writer. This is the reappointment of Lisa Andoja as a City Council grant writer for term to expire January 6, 2025, as sponsored by myself, Council Vice President Vargas, and Councilwoman Renzulli. This is subject to vote.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Any discussion? Yes, Councilwoman Renzulli.
Thank you. I would just like to say Ms. Andoja I support Ms. Andoja because she's done an incredible job bringing in money for the city of Cranston. I think she's secured something like $2.2 million. And we haven't seen that from a grant writer in any recent time that I can remember. And through COVID and in a time when there's financial difficulties across the board and inflation, we need this grant money so that we can do the things we have to do. So I would like you to please support this reappointment. Thank you.
Any additional discussion? I see Ms. Andoja is present this evening, and I assume you'd like to say a few words.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. And I just wanted to thank all of you. It's been an absolute pleasure representing the city of Cranston. I loved it. And I want you to know I'm not going to rest on my laurels. I'm going to be humble and I'm going to work harder to over deliver and try to exceed what we've secured to date. And I just want to thank everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Andoja. Thank you for all the money that you have generated, and we look forward to additional grant funding to save the city money and to help us develop the city in a very tax-friendly way. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for the sponsors. I appreciate it.
And clerk, if you can please take the roll. Thank you.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilman Donegan,
Yes.
Councilman Campiano,
Yes.
Councilman Paplaskas,
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas,
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Yes. And congratulations to Ms. Andoja. Next is the municipal court clerk. This is the reappointment of Elizabeth Bettis as municipal court clerk for term to expire January 6, 2025, as sponsored by myself and Council Vice President Vargas. This
Motion
is-
to approve.
Second. Any discussion? There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilman Donegan,
Yes.
Councilman Campiano,
Yes.
Councilman Paplaskas,
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas,
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Yes. And congratulations to Ms. Bettis, and thank you for your work. Next is the Emergency Management Liaison. This is for informational purposes only, with no votes being taken. And this is for Council Vice President Vargas as Chair of Public Works for term to expire on January 6, 2025 as the Emergency Management Liaison. Next is the School Buildings Committee, Councilman Donegan for term to expire January 6, 2025.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilman Donegan,
Yes.
Councilman Campiano,
Yes.
Council Paplaskas,
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas,
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Yes. Next is for Councilman Campiano for term to expire January 6, 2025.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilman Ferry.
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilman Donegan,
Yes.
Councilman Campiano,
Yes.
Council Paplaskas,
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas,
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Yes. And thank you to both of you for serving on that committee. Next is the Affordable Housing Commission. And we have first up the reappointment of Derek A. Tutt for term to expire February 22, 2025 as a minority leader appointment with no votes being taken as for informational purposes only. Next is the appointment of Amy Rainone for term to expire, or it should be reappointment for Amy Rainone for term to expire February 22, 2025 as the majority leader appointment for informational purposes with no votes to be taken. And finally, the appointment of Christina Brown for term to expire February 22, 2025, and this is subject to a vote.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mazzulli,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilman Donegan,
Yes.
Councilman Campiano,
Yes.
Councilman Paplaskas.
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas,
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Yes. And congratulations to them for their reappointments and appointment. Next this evening is the report of city officers. At this time, I would ask Mr. Hill, as Chair of the Historical Cemeteries Commission, to come to the podium as the Cranston Historical Cemeteries Commission, and he will discuss their annual report. Thank you.
This is my first one. John Hill, Chairman of the Commission. This is my first rodeo on this. I'm not sure I can make remarks. You have the report. I could take questions, whatever is your pleasure.
Are there any questions from council members for Mr. Hill? No? There's no questions. Mr. Hill, we thank you very much for your service and the members of your commission as well. We know it's a volunteer basis and you've done a remarkable job throughout the city. I've had the opportunity,
Yes,
at least on one occasion, to volunteer my time as well. And I appreciate all of your efforts, and the report speaks for itself. But if you have anything you'd like to add, you're more than welcome.
Among decisions I'll probably regret later. I would just like to kind of say it was kind of a chaotic year for us. We had 2 resignations at the beginning of the year. And then we had the death of one of our members, Walter Slocum. Walter was a living encyclopedia of the city. He knew everything. He knew the history of the city. He knew every cemetery, and he was one of those guys. Someone can take his place on the commission, but he was irreplaceable, and we miss him every day. You can see the stuff in the report. I think we're really excited about our social media program. That's really taken off well. The only other thing I really wanted to say was I wanted to thank the Public Works Department, because when we do these cleanups, we can generate anywhere near 50 bags of yard waste. And they've been great about finding ways we can get those bags picked up. They're never around for more than a couple days. And they've been great for us, and I wanted them on the record on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Otherwise-
Thank you.
Okay.
I would ask this evening for a motion to accept Mr. Hill's report into the record and his comments.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Oh, Councilman Paplaskas.
Thank you, Council President. Sir, from the Cemeteries Commission, just want to say thank you. I'm a member of a Boy Scout troop with my son and a lot of the other troops. And 2 years ago, we cleaned up the cemetery on Green Avenue. And you guys came back this year and did it again. And that, when we did it 2 years ago, it was way over 50 bags of lawn debris and twigs and branches, and a tree fell over. And I'm glad you came back, because I can't believe how much in 1 year it overgrows and it looks just like no one touched it a year prior. So I just want to thank you and all your members. And if you ever have any projects going on in the city that you need help with, shoot me an email. If there are scouts looking for service hours, I'm happy to send them your way to help out. Thank you.
And Council.
Ooh, I just want to say, where's Mr. Hill? There he is. Again, thank you for submitting this. Some people know that I am very adamant when it comes down to cemeteries and making sure that they're taken care of, but also providing a report in terms of the plot and all the information as much as possible to the city. So I really appreciate this, and I look forward as well as working with you. I think there was a cleanup as well over on Park Avenue next to the gas station. And so look forward to reaching out to you and partnering up again and doing a cleanup there as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Rosal, if you could please take the roll. Thanks.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mazzulli,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilman Donegan, Councilman Campiano,
Yes.
Councilman Paplaskas,
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas,
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Yes. Next is executive communications. We have the request to be continued in service for 1 year, Deputy Fire Chief Robert Ryan, the Cranston Fire Department. Before we take any motions, I'll give the administration an opportunity to speak. Thanks.
Thank you, Council President. The mayor and the administration would like to advise everyone that Deputy Chief Ryan has met all the requirements to be continued in service for 1 additional year as part of the Cranston Fire Department. He's had a great career and we want him to stick around as long as possible. So we ask that you approve him. Thank you.
And I'll open it up for any other discussion before I take a motion. Any? There being none, I'll open for motions.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, Rosalba, if you can please take the roll.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mazzulli,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilman Donegan,
Yes.
Councilman Campiano,
Yes.
Council Paplaskas,
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas.
Yes.
Council President Carino.
Yes. Next this evening is the legal expense analysis report from July 1, 2022 to January 23, 2023. Do I have any motions? No, we don't need to. No, I'm sorry, my error. It's information only, no votes taken. Okay. Is there any discussion on that this evening from any council members? Councilman Donegan.
Thank you, Council President. I know that we can't get into the particulars of the case of the cases themselves. On 12/14, we paid just shy of $20,000 on the Coastal Partners matter with DeSisto Law. Do we have an expected amount of approximately what that might cost us in legal fees?
That matter, as you know, is in litigation. And I think we're best off if you'd like to go into executive session, but probably not for public consumption because of the lawsuit that's currently being pursued by Coastal Partners.
Let me, I thank you, Director Moretti. Let me rephrase. Not in terms of litigation, just from a how much is it going to cost us in legal fees?
It's unknown to the extent that the suit persists. That's why it's an indefinite answer. You can look at court filings and draw a conclusion yourself, but I don't think the city should represent that in any fashion. It can only prejudice us. But not trying to keep anything from you, but happy to discuss in private and in confidence.
Any further discussion? Okay, there being none, we'll move on to Council President Communications. There being none this evening. Next, we'll move on to Council Member Communications, and first up is Council Vice President Vargas.
Thank you, Council President. So I have one item on here, and the one item that I have on here is the item that the majority of the residents of Ward 1 are here for, which is actually the Edgewood laundry mat on the corner of Broad Street in Massasoit. I've spoken to many of you or replied to emails and or text messages in terms of the vibration concern and the interruption of the quality of life that many of you have been experiencing lately or for the last few months. And I wanted to first and foremost note that your problem is our problem. At least it's my problem and it's the problem. And I don't want to speak on behalf of the other council members, but I'm sure that they would agree that it's also our problem because no one wants to have their quality of life interrupted at all. And so that laundromat, and so for the record, I did reach out to the laundromat and I finally was able to connect over a phone call. And I spoke to the owner. I believe that there was, as mentioned, an inspection behalf of the city that did go out and give that a look. I believe that area is zoned as an A6 zone, possibly some pre-existing non-conforming. And so it seems like possibly with upgrades, there could be the reason why that vibration has taken place. I have seen videos to my council colleagues. I have seen videos. I have been emailed information, and I've been hearing a lot from the neighbors in terms of the rattling and the vibration that's been taking place. I do want to say that by all means, I am in support of small businesses because they are the backbone to our local economy. And I am not asking the business to be shut down nor to move, but to first address the issue on this vibration that is taking place, and start off there and move forward and see what we're able to do. I reached out to the city, one of their city solicitors who is here with us this evening. I did mention to the owner that I would be bringing this up before the city council meeting this evening. They did, I don't want to speak on their behalf because I also want to make sure that I'm courteous that they can come and speak on themselves and represent themselves at the same time. And so I would like to have the administration or one of our legal counsel from behalf of the city provide us with some information or some guidance as to the power that we as a city council can have to either bring the possible business before us, possibly talk about hours or, what have they done? And if this is the reason why the houses are rattling and the vibration taking place, and whether it's reinforcement or, machine out level in order to avoid this rocking of the machine. I think there has been previous issues or concerns that have been brought to us where there has been vibration or noise situations that we've actually sent someone out, and I wasn't sure whether or not we have, I think they're called Doppler vibration meters, where it's an equipment that can measure noise and vibration on this end. It's certainly not fair to the residents, given the fact that I don't actually know what the hours of operation are. Do we have power as a city council to start off in those steps and possibly have a conversation as to, can we ask them about hours of operations, whether it's Monday through Friday, whether it's on a weekend. I know we currently have an ordinance in place for landscapers in the city to pick up trash at after 7 o'clock in the morning, not after the laundry mats that we have in the city. And so I know that's a lot to kind of take in, but even if it was by virtue of introducing a new ordinance, as we're hearing, right, this was a laundromat that's been there for quite some time. Because they've been there, are they able to be grandfathered, even if I introduce an ordinance that would actually restrict them in terms of hours of operations? And so I ask that the city solicitor can at least provide us with some information and that's one. The other point that I do want to point out is it's clearly a residential neighborhood, and I drove by and I have pictures on my phone, and when someone came to the podium and mentioned that there was a barrel of chemical, I did see it. I took a picture of it, and I did, we have children in that neighborhood, and the last thing we want, whether it's water, whether it clearly has a chemical noted on there, what responsibility, do we as a council have if inspection did go by and find was able to find the neighbor, but not the laundromat. Again, I just want to make sure that everybody knows I'm not after like a certain business, but I do want to make sure that the business, while they're there, are also in compliance with the city, whether it's with, the cleanup, whether it's the rodents, whether it's chemicals out there, in leaving carts full of towels in the back of the actual building. I didn't print the pictures, and I'm not sure what the protocol kind of is in terms of I can pass my phone around, or I can actually have forward that information eventually over to the clerk, and she can then disseminate that to the rest of the council later on. So there's a lot of info that I just kind of threw at you, Mr. Verdecchia, but if we can at least figure out what we can possibly do to help out the neighbors, and it's just not fair to them. And I know I wouldn't want to be living next door to a place that is making my house vibrate. If I come home, whether it's at 2 o'clock in the morning from work or not, or not, the point is, there's a vibration going on. And in those videos, you can actually see the kitchen island of one of the videos that I was sent with their kitchen items on there, like just rattling. So that's just one of the videos that I ended up seeing. So if we can kind of get some sort of a
Sure.
legal advice on this.
So, as Vice President Vargas has stated, we did have some conversations on this within the last week or so, and I've done quite a bit of research. And frankly, this is not really a new issue for me. The specific facts are always different, but the overall issue is the same, and we've seen it before. We've seen it with the windmills in Johnston encroaching on Cranston residents. We've seen it with yard works down in that area off Warwick Avenue. We've seen it with Northeast Tree. This is nothing new. But what sets this one apart a bit from the others is the fact that laundromats are not regulated under our code of ordinances. That's the first thing that sets this one a little bit apart. So what does that mean? It means that you can't have a show cause and bring them in and threaten to take some type of action on a license because they're not required under our ordinances to have one. Okay. Does that mean that the city is completely powerless to regulate businesses that are operating within the confines of city boundaries? And the short answer to that is no, the city is not powerless. However, those powers are very, very limited. And the reason for that is because all of the activity that the neighbors have described tonight fit under the general category of what we call legally nuisance. Okay, what does nuisance mean? Well, someone says to you, you're being a nuisance, you're bothering me is basically what it means. But in the legal sense, nuisance generally defined means some activity that constitutes interference with one's reasonable use of their property. That's probably the simplest definition. There are two types of nuisances. There's private, there's public. And you may recall, or you may not, I don't know. But when the windmill issue was before us, I discussed at length at that time how the Rhode Island Supreme Court treats the two of them. Public nuisance is extremely difficult to establish. The Attorney General has tried to do it with lead paint. They've worked in conjunction with DEM on a few other sites, and were moderately successful. So this is on the state level, okay? So for us, when I say us, when I mean the council, even the administration, we have some authority, but it's very limited in terms of what we can do. So if there were a situation where a business was operating in such a fashion that it posed a serious, direct health threat to the citizens of Cranston. The mere fact that they're not licensed would not act as a bar, I should say, from having the city taking some type of action. The problem is, and I know the neighbors are not going to be happy with this and they don't want to hear this, but what's being described here does not rise to that type of level, okay, in my opinion, and based on everything I've read. If lead paint poisoning doesn't rise to that level, as the Supreme Court has already found, something like vibration and causing cracks in walls and glasses falling is certainly not going to rise to that level. And I don't say that to minimize anything they're going to, believe me. I have looked high and low, both under our ordinances, state law. I've looked everywhere to find, as I always do when these types of cases arise, to try and find a way to take some action. But as I said, unfortunately, because of the fact that they're unlicensed and they're not required to be licensed, it really puts us in a disadvantageous position to do anything. Now, at the beginning, in some of the comments, I know that the term private nuisance was briefly discussed by someone. And again, I know people don't want to hear this, but when you have a certain number of people in a certain area being affected by a business operation, it's really up to them to file a private nuisance action, because the city, under those circumstances, in my opinion, probably would not even have the legal standing to go into court on their behalf. So again, it's not that the city doesn't want to do something. It's not that Vice President Vargas doesn't want to do something. It's not that the Safety Services Committee doesn't want to do anything, or that the full council doesn't want to do anything. It's a question of having the legal ability, the legal authority, and most importantly, the proof required to get something accomplished. So, but having said that, I think a wise first step, I don't believe that we can compel someone who's unlicensed to come in, but I would suggest reaching out to them so that we can learn a little bit more from a factual standpoint as to what's changed. So in other words, how long has this condition existed with this vibration and with these machines? When were they replaced? What type of machines? We should be able to get an opinion from someone, an engineer, someone who could tell us what the adverse effects are of these types of machines. Because it may be a situation where perhaps it could be remedied by something as simple as putting more insulation, some type of rubber surrounding the machine. I don't know, I'm not an engineer, but we should explore some type of solution, I think, on a voluntary basis with them first, because I really don't think at this point we have authority to compel them to come in. So that would be my first recommendation. And that's, again, you know, we're kind of mixing the legal with the social and the political aspect of this, and it kind of involves all three. But from the purely legal standpoint, we're not in a very strong position as a city to do something in court. Because once you go to court, I mean, these videos are great. The testimony of the neighbors, that's all great for this type of a hearing. When you go into a courtroom, it's a completely different standard that has to be met. And I've read cases where people have come in looking to establish a private or a public nuisance. They've submitted affidavits. They've had some medical testimony. They've had testimonies of engineers, and it was found to be insufficient to meet the burden of establishing a nuisance. It's a very, very high bar. Okay. The latest case was just decided not even a year ago. I've got it here, and this concerned windmills down in Portsmouth. So again, I know it's a little discouraging to hear this, but I'm speaking strictly from the legal standpoint and from the standpoint of what the city, whether it's the administration, whether it's the council, what we can do to help these people. And from a legal standpoint, it's extremely, extremely limited what we could do.
Council President, if I can actually continue to
Yes.
ask a question. Thank you. So I'm trying to kind of understand this whole process. So if the laundromat decided to operate 24/7, they're in their own right to do so, but we don't have the power to limit them on the hours, or could we? Because at what point do you then say you're clearly opening, you're open for 24/7 and you're disturbing the neighborhood with the, if the, assuming, let's say, yes, that the vibration is definitely coming from this establishment who just put new, whether it's a washer or I assume it's a washer, but they did put new machines in there from what the owner mentioned to me. Do we have any jurisdiction at that point?
The short answer is yes. Okay, but we're used to dealing with licensed businesses with hours of operation on their application as part of their license. And we've seen it once a month, like a CVS will come in, they'll want a 24-hour license. A BV restaurant will come in, want to remain open till 1 a.m., so on and so forth. Again, we don't regulate laundromats per se. However, that being said, every city council, every town council in the state of Rhode Island has what we call all the powers of the town, all the powers of the city. What that means is that the administration and the council can always do what's best or try to do what's best to promote the health, safety, welfare, and morals of its citizens. Now, it sounds like a fancy phrase, and it sort of is. What exactly does that mean? It doesn't lend itself to an easy definition. It just means if we take an extreme example, like you just said, and they were operating 24 hours a day, and they were making all kinds of noise, and there was hazardous material coming out the windows or whatever, something like that. The mere fact that they're not licensed doesn't mean we have to say, oh, well, sorry, we can't do anything. Okay, we could. But that's an extreme example. And I think what we would need to do is we would have to invoke the assistance of the Superior Court in that instance. And there's a mechanism, and I've done it in other cases. We would have to actually go to Superior Court because we don't have the power really to have we can't have a show cause. There's no license to take. So we would have to invoke the equity of the court and say, look, we need your help. We need a restraining order. We need a preliminary injunction. It's affecting the health, safety, welfare, and morals of the city of Cranston. But that's an extreme example.
So two quick things, well, not quick, but two things is we as a city don't have, I guess, I don't know if power is the right word to regulate laundromats. Who does? And B, if we were to write an ordinance to requiring a license, would they be part of this ordinance that we would submit, or I'd submit, or whomever this council would submit?
I did try to look up there is some sporadic state law on laundromats, but it mostly talked about having as a requirement wastewater facilities and adequate water hookups and things of that nature. It didn't really get into the nuts and bolts of regulation per se. It was more from an environmental standpoint. So it depending on the type of ordinance that the council would want to pass. it's difficult for me to give an answer without seeing precisely what the ordinance would encompass. Would it be limited to hours of operation? Would it be limited to number of machines? Would it be limited to some other factor? I don't know, because I don't know what you have in mind, and I know you're probably looking to me for guidance. Well, what could we do? And that's a difficult question to answer too, because it's a mixed use area. To my knowledge, and I haven't done any research on them, my belief is that they're a prior non-conforming use. My guess is they've been there in operation before the Cranston's zoning ordinances making it residential took effect. So they're grandfathered in, that's the term everyone uses. But prior non-conforming uses, if they're changed or altered to the extent that they no longer resemble the original use, then the prior non-conforming use is extinguished. But that is an intensive factual analysis. I don't have enough information to know that. So it would, to answer your question, it would really depend, and it's something I think we would need to discuss in executive session as to, you know, how far the council would want to go in terms of regulation. Because you cannot aim regulation at any one specific business. It's okay to regulate an entire classification, that's one thing, but you have to be careful if it looks like it's being aimed at.
Right,
particular
no,
business.
no, I understand that. And so how do we know if it's commercial versus industrial? How do we define
Well,
that?
I think, I see Director Pizzulo's here tonight, but that's more of a zoning question. Code enforcement should know that. I know they went out there. If anyone would be familiar with zoning and you know, the distinction between those two uses, it would be them. I mean, there is a table of uses. Laundromats are allowed, I believe, in a C1 through a C5 zone. I saw that. Beyond that, I think we would have to talk to code enforcement.
My last question, I apologize, Councilmember Paplaskas, but it's, what did the inspector find? Did the inspector find anything? Because again, if the inspector went by at a certain time where they weren't that machine specific, if there was one machine specific that's actually causing the vibration wasn't in operation, you're not going to find anything, right? So I'm just curious, what did they find?
I'm not privy to that. I haven't spoken with anyone. I don't know who went down there. But part of the problem is this use kind of is falling into a crack that we have in our code of ordinances. We have noise ordinances, very specific. Tells you how many decibels are allowed, during what time periods a business can operate at a given level of decibel, very specific. We don't have anything that talks about vibration per se. It's kind of mixed in with noise and vibrations. They use those kinds of phrases, but there isn't a specific measurement. There isn't a specific table. There isn't a specific ordinance that just deals with vibration. Unless code enforcement can show me or you or the Safety Services Committee a specific ordinance being violated. Again, it basically takes any power we may have away from us, because if we can't show that they're violating a specific ordinance, I don't see how we can take action. Unless, as I said, unless there are exceptions to everything, unless it rose to a level that was just off the charts. And from what I'm hearing, I again, with all due respect to everyone in the neighbors, I mean, it's got to be really aggravating, but again, from a legal standpoint, it has to be off the charts, through the ceiling type of activity.
Councilwoman Renzulli.
Hi, Attorney Verdecchia. So there is an American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning Engineers that does assess human response to vibration and potential damage to structures, but they don't actually, it's not required by the International Building Code. So there is someone who does do this. It's just not required by building code, so I don't think that they have to.
One moment. Yeah, there are people, and, you know, again, I have to revert back to what I said in my beginning remarks. When we're talking about, this still comes under the category of nuisance. This is classic nuisance. And the law on nuisance, as I said at the beginning, it's very, very clear. And the Supreme Court has considered these cases for many, many years. And this is not a public nuisance case. This is a private nuisance case. By definition, by case law analysis, it's private. And if it's private, it means it's up to the private individual to do something. We can only do and take action if we have an ordinance or some other code provision that's being violated. And I'm not seeing it. I haven't talked to anyone at code enforcement. My understanding is they didn't cite anyone for any type of violation, except I guess for a neighbor, but I'm talking about the laundromat. They didn't find any ordinance being violated, so it reverts to a private matter.
Trying to say that I don't think it's
Unfortunately,
part
it
of
does.
their code, but if the city does take action to help, maybe the owner of this laundromat doesn't know that they don't want to get in trouble, they don't want to admit any fault. If we tell them that there are ways to mitigate the excessive vibration, they might be open to it.
Right.
Just by
Well,
being
that's-
good neighbors. If
Right.
we say we can't regulate you, but there are people who do know how, this is a problem other places, is all I'm trying to say. Thank you.
Councilman Poplawskis.
Thank you. Just a couple of points of information. In the past, Attorney Videcchia, going back a while, if we had an issue with a business, we would send them a letter, or we could send them a letter to come in. You know, the safety services, the licensing committee request your presence, not going to be a typical show cause.
Correct.
Maybe it's something where we can ask them to come in. It sounds like to me, they either outgrew their capacity at that location, or they have a machine that needs servicing if it's coming from there. So maybe if we can send a letter, get them to come in, you know, get that dialogue going, it might fix itself just by doing that.
I had suggested that when I spoke with Vice President Vargas. I said I'd be happy to draft a letter asking them, you know, in a nice way, as you suggested, to come in before, let's head this off before it really becomes a problem. It's in their interest to do so. I mean, I think the last thing they want to do is litigate a matter that possibly should be able to be worked out.
And I don't represent your area, Council, Vice President Vargas does, but I'll take a ride out to Edgewood this week or next week, and I'll set my car out there, and I want to feel the vibration too. So I just want to let you know. What time? 5 a.m. You know, when all but listen, I'll definitely take a ride by, and I know other members of the council will most likely do the same. And when you started talking about the underground, I was looking up on my computer that Narragansett Bay tunnel that they're digging. I was trying to think of anything that could be doing that, but it doesn't seem like they're near you. So I'm trying to figure it out. Thanks.
I'm sorry, public comment is no longer allowed, and Councilman Poplawskis is aware of that as well. Thank you. Councilwoman Jermaine, did you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you. I have a question. As I listen to Solicitor Favicchio, it feel like there's nothing to do. And I don't want to be pessimist, because we have a huge problem here. And all of those people here, they need answers. So I remember we passed an ordinance about noise, right? If we can take the precedent, noises, when we have Worcester, we wouldn't say it's private because resident has their Worcester, they have noise in their home, and that impact another home. And those noises, whether we call it vibration or whatever, it's nuisance for me. This is nuisance. Is it nuisance?
It is
Is this
nuisance, but
nuisance?
yes, but but that goes back to what I said at the beginning
So
of this.
if it's nuisance, something should be done. It's nuisance.
But what I'm saying is it can't be done. There's very, very strict requirements as to what can be done. And from the city standpoint, there's basically very little, if anything, we can do. It has to come from the private sector to get this done, unless
So
we enact an ordinance, then we can enforce. We don't have one on vibration. We don't have any on laundromats.
So when we talk about nuisance, we can go back. I am not a lawyer. If we go back to the charter, when they describe nuisance, so vibration doesn't fall under nuisance. Is that what we can say? White and black, vibration is not a nuisance. For example, I would say like, by definition, nuisance. So if it's not nuisance, or because I feel like if it's nuisance, if it doesn't say vibration is not part of it, there's something we can do.
No, I'm saying that I'm not denying it's a nuisance. It sounds to
Okay.
me like it is.
So if it's a
But the
nuisance, we
question
can do
was,
something.
what can we do about it? And my answer is very, very little. Can the city do about it in the absence of a violation of a specific ordinance? And we don't have any. So, and even if we did, to establish a public nuisance, as I said, the state of Rhode Island couldn't do it with lead paint. It would be impossible for us to establish this as a public nuisance. It can only be established as a private nuisance, but think of the word private, not public. Private means private individuals, private citizens, private landowners have to initiate this.
So how we can help them? Because that's why they are here.
Well, I think Council Vice President Vargas mentioned, she was asking about perhaps if we enacted some type of legislation regarding this type of, that pertains to this type of situation. Regulations that apply to laundromats, not just this one, all
For all
laundromats,
vibration.
maybe. So we have a very detailed noise ordinance. We might want to amend that to include vibration,
Mhm.
okay? But we would need the assistance of some type of sound engineer, someone who's in the field who could tell us what is an acceptable amount of vibration, what isn't, just like we do with the noise. So under 60 decibels is okay. Over 60 decibels is a violation. You need that. You need that kind of
Solicitor-
particularity.
Solicitor, I disagree with, because if you are in your home, it's shaking and your wall is cracking, your ceiling is cracking, this is not something we can take lightly. So if we have 15 people have the same problem, it's a huge problem. So cracking, so you need, I don't think that's tangible. You don't need or specialists to say this cracking, wasn't happening before. It's happening within 2 years or 1 year. So I think we should have enough evidence we don't need to go further. So to have my house cracking, my house shaking, and someone go to see that. So what I would like to, as Council Vice President said, so they are not but we all here, as she said before, we all care about what's going on here. And we need to find something as soon as possible. So I would not like to have my house cracking and something, what is in a private matter is not something. So that's why we are powered to do something. Thank you.
Councilman Donegan, then Councilman Campopiano. Go ahead.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Solicitor Verdecchia. So, the inspections is unable to cite them for anything because they're not out of compliance with any code because no code exists.
That's my understanding. I haven't spoken with them personally. That's what I've been told.
And through the enactment of an ordinance, not specifically tailored towards this business entity, but more generally towards laundry mats or to deal with vibrations
Yep.
emanating from a property. That could help us, we could leverage that code to compel them into compliance through whatever.
Then we would have an enforcement mechanism, yes.
Completely lost my train of thought. I apologize. I might raise my hand again later. Sorry.
That's okay. We'll give you a pause, Councilman Campopiano.
Thank you, Council President. I understand the solicitor's point that we have no power, but I do have a little bit of expertise in this area. I deal with equipment all day long that is easily 10 times the size of these washing machines and these dryers. And if they're mounted correctly with the mounted vibration control, you could stand within 2 feet of them and not feel anything. So it's my view that this is something that is not mounted correctly and they're not on the right pads. And if they want to be a good neighbor, they only have to address this and fix this problem. It should be very simple.
And I believe everyone has spoken at least once. If Councilman Donegan, if you recalled what you wanted to say, go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Not through the council president to Director Moretti. Did the inspections department report anything back to the mayor's office or to yourself about their findings?
Yes, Councilman, kind of pretty much just to repeat the feelings that Solicitor Verdecchia explained. Inspections had gone out and went through the book to see if there's any violations. They thought that I could tell you some of the things I recall from their reporting was that they had purchased new equipment, more of the high technology, which could result in greater faster speeds in terms of cleaning, in terms of drying. That could result in that, but there was no violation because they did not they were not required to receive permits for any special electrical wiring. So they just adapted to what was currently there. So relative to vibration, there's nothing on the books that they reported back that could be noted or addressed. There was an issue of a report of rats, but she inspected and they produced a certificate to say that the business had a contractor for that. I think they noticed a lid was open in the dumpster and just made sure that lid was closed for that purpose. And I believe the issue over some laundry bins that were out in the yard or the back. But it was just in transit during business hours and operations. But there was nothing that they could point to relative to any ordinances on the books or state ordinances that could be enforced. She did speak with the owner, I believe, and addressed, I believe, the issue that Mr. Councilman Campopiano mentioned about the vibration. I too believe that maybe something could be done. And certainly I'll personally be happy to go out there with myself or anyone else here to speak with the owner to see if they cooperatively could identify what the problem is. So happy to do so, but inspections had been there, done a thorough evaluation as the councilwoman and I had spoken about. Sorry to say.
Is there anyone who hasn't already spoken on this topic who wishes to be heard from council members? No? Okay. I would like to say to the residents in this area that are experiencing this, you should not have to be dealing with this. That's an understatement. And those words don't solve your problem. And I understand that, but having been a resident, myself before being a council member, I've been in your shoes in terms of coming here before the council and seeking help. And I can assure you that myself and our other council members take that role with great responsibility. You have heard that and some of you may have understood this before you came in this evening, that we are restricted within the bounds of the law, but that doesn't mean that we don't have some remedies and recourse available to us. And I thank Solicitor's Office this evening for addressing this. I thank Councilwoman Vargas for bringing this to the table to us. And what I would like to see is, as has already been discussed this evening, inspections with code enforcement addressing it, because clearly, there has to be some type of recourse with that type of shaking and stuff going on. The overarching issue of just common decency. There are many laundromats throughout the state, and I'm sure they are not causing this kind of issue. So it's, not acceptable. And from a business standpoint, if they're responsible business owners, you would think that they would respect that and welcome some guidance in trying to how to be a better neighbor. And the last thing I would say is that two things. I foresee, to Solicitor Verdecchia's point, us hopefully as a council enacting an ordinance that prevents this in the future, even if it unfortunately cannot retroactively be applied to this situation, which that question remains to be seen, so that we have a license, that we have standards, so that it may be applicable to the situation. It may not. We'll have to see as time goes on. And the last thing I will say is that in terms of where we go from here, perhaps we can move this item to either safety services or ordinance committee, or the next full council meeting to be determined. I would hate to put it on just 2 weeks from now in safety services, and there isn't much of substance to report back at that time. But I'm sure Councilwoman Vargas will also, Council Vice President Vargas will be in touch, and will be in touch with you as well. Okay. Thank you. Council Vice President Vargas, if you have something.
Yes, thank you. I'm definitely going to take that offer on as far as sending out a letter. If we can actually draft that, Mr. Verdecchia, so then that way we can at least provide them with the time and date, and come in, and allow the business as well to provide us with any changes or anything else that would help out, and probably then will they also be able to understand the concerns that the neighbors are living with on a daily basis.
I'll be more than happy to draft that letter, and we'll have it delivered. And hopefully we get a good response, because it seems to me that every time we do that, people take it seriously. They do want to be good neighbors, and they come in. So hopefully that'll be the case here.
Thank you. And to the neighbors that are here today, when that letter gets drafted with the date and time, I will also let all of you know. So that way you are kept abreast in terms of the time, dates, and if you'd like to obviously come to that meeting as well. And if you are not able to come in person, note that we also have a Zoom live link in as well, that you're also able to provide your public hearing testimony through that avenue as well. And I'll work to echo that Council President's point on, possible ordinances as well, whether or not it'll actually retroact, that'll be, determined, but at least we're able to actually move forward and know that all of you are being heard today, and continue to provide me with any emails or videos as well. As a matter of fact, I would probably share it with all the council members as well, or if you send it to me, I don't mind forwarding that over to the clerk so she could disseminate to each and every one of us as well. Thank you.
Next this evening, Councilwoman Renzulli, you have some council member communications.
Yes. Thank you, Madam President. Okay, so my first communication would be in regards to waste management. I don't see Mr. Bernardo here, I really wanted to see how the rest of the council, if they've been getting complaints. So I have some reinvigorated complaints of trash not being picked up on schedule. It might be just one side of the street. It might be trash was picked up and not recycling. It's on both sides of the city. It's random addresses. It's even, former council members saying, hey, my recycling didn't get picked up, my trash got picked up.
If I could just ask members of the public if you could quietly leave the chamber so that the stenographer can accurately take a record. Thank you. Go ahead.
So I'm just curious of when complaints come in, because I know the Clean City Coordinator does coordinate with Waste Management. But when complaints come in through different avenues, if there is a shared document or software or something that is keeping track of these complaints, so we can know if it's certain areas repeatedly, certain streets, if it's because I know there is still a staffing problem across industry, across the country. I'm just curious if we have any of this data to ever compare what's going on, because I'm having a hard time, keeping up with my residents' complaints on this matter, and I don't know what to tell them.
We do not have a database that you're speaking of. So basically the calls either go right directly to Joe, and Joe's very responsive handling them, or they'll go through Gina at Constituent Affairs, and then she coordinates them. I spoke to Director Bernardo today, and he has not been getting any complaint, not any complaints, but any inordinate amount of complaints recently, more than the couple a day that we always get. So this is relatively new from what he's telling me about the amount of complaints that you're receiving.
I usually, to be honest with you, I call the Clean City Coordinator myself, because it's easier for me to try and get direct help. I'd like to just know. And then sometimes I tell the residents it's difficult when we get through the holiday season. There's holidays that cause delays, and then there's weather that causes delays on top of that. I don't know if they'll come on if you're Friday, you're kind of like, SOL until you get to the next week, because I think that the jump is closed on Saturdays, to my understanding, but sometimes I see trucks out there. So I'm trying to understand what we should be telling residents. I don't know if any other council members have this problem, but I don't want to always be calling Mr. DiCarlo. So I want to know who, but I think we should be tracking specific types of complaints and categories. Otherwise, we're going to constantly be having these conversations. This happened with rats, and we try to implement something. Otherwise, we're just always in here saying, oh, I got a lot of complaints. Oh, I did. And then someone says, well, I haven't. But that's not a way to govern. It's not a way that someone would do business. When I call a business, or when I work at a business, we have the complaints categorized, so we can say, I got 32 complaints this week, and they happen to be over on this side of the city, and that driver's wife just had a baby and they don't have coverage. And then that's an easy fix, but we don't have that. I don't know. I'm not really requesting it. I know I can't request.
I can follow up with Joe. I'm
administrative
sure he has some kind of system that he utilizes himself, but to say we have a citywide database, we do not have that. But I can follow up with Joe, see what system he utilizes to categorize these, as you say, and maybe be able to pinpoint certain areas in particular.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if anyone else has the same problem.
Councilwoman Jermaine?
Thank you, Council President. So, since I started in this council, I always raise the issue with waste management. And sometimes things work out and sometimes it doesn't. And with this trash have not been picked up, with bins that has not been replaced, we have a huge issue. So I have complaints. Sometimes I just feel like discouraged even right now, because it's like you don't see the solution. I have someone that emailed me, until now, we do not know when they're gonna pick up yard waste. Many residents have bags of yard waste in front of their lawn and sitting there. And they scheduled to pick up Christmas tree. And Christmas tree has not been picked up in all the city. So right in front of my house, I see the Christmas tree right on the lawn. And I mentioned that we have an enforcement problem, but because it's the contractor, so they can do whatever they want because there is no penalties. So that's really frustrated me, I have to say. I am frustrated with waste management. I don't know what to say to the resident anymore. And you remember, you see, even my bin at home, my own bin, rip off. I cannot solve the problem of my resident. I cannot solve mine. So to come to replace the bins, and as you mentioned, the wax problem we have, when you do not have your bins secured, you have pile of trash, even in yard waste in front of your lawn. So what we can do, because this is really unacceptable.
There were systematic problems during the pandemic. We've addressed that. We spoke about it because primarily Waste Management was having problems hiring. We were feeling very good actually over the last several months that we feel that those problems behind us. We're caught up receiving less complaints. And I have to tell you, we probably have the best Clean City coordinator around. I think anyone who dealt with Mr. DiCarlo. He addresses things on the spot. And by the next day, I'll be surprised if these issues, if addressed to the city, are not taken care of. That's why we have a system with constituent affairs. To Councilwoman's observation, beginning this past week, we spoke to the council president, council vice president. We're going to change things a little bit around to track reports of constituent issues. To be able to log them in. We're going to, in fact, I'll have some communication to the council folks about documenting and creating these logs so we can look back, so we can give you statistics actually going forward. So that's something new that we're going to be trying to implement just now. We're going to begin to roll this out as we speak. But I have to say, if there are issues, please send them directly to the administration. Certainly, if constituents have them, to Mr. DiCarlo, but I am not aware, and Director Bernardo is a straight shooter. He's not aware of any significant issues. There's 82,000 residents and approximately 50,000 households. Every day there's going to be an issue probably. But to say there's systematic problems about trees, if they didn't pick up the tree and if we're aware of it, I could tell you, I don't think Mr. DiCarlo keeps things on back order. And he follows up, but be happy to follow up on any issues you do have. But I was almost proud to say that they were at a point post-pandemic that we felt we are in good shape, and this is news to us, but we need specifics in order to act upon it. Generalities doesn't help us. To that point, Waste Management, there's been issues over some of their trucks leaking they had some older equipment. With the pandemic, they've had problems with old used equipment's parts. They promised us, I believe, 6 new trucks beginning this spring. More than that, I believe, in terms of recycling. So we're looking to improve that. In terms of bins, actually, I've authorized a very good amount of bins. There should not be any trash bin issues with holes. If it's reported to us, they're going to have a new bin. If there's repairs, I'll go downstairs and I'll see wheels. Bin wheels in the Public Works Department that people are going to pick up or Joe's going to be going out. But I encourage everyone to report these issues to us. If we have a problem, then bring it back to us. But I have to say, Mr. Bernardo, he's not going to not tell us the truth if there's really been a backup, and there's honest as could be. To answer one of the questions, I believe, yes, the landfill closes on Saturdays. But whenever the spillage, if you will, for various reasons for pickup, they will pick up on Saturdays to the points where the trucks are at capacity to hold them for the weekend.
Question, when the yard waste, do we have a schedule for the yard waste to be picked up?
Yeah, I forget off the top of my head, but I believe it ends, I think, in approximately December 10th, that week approximately. It's on the website. It's on the city's website, and I believe it's probably been posted for 2023 when it begins to pick up this spring, but obviously it ceases in the winter time. But it's constantly, it's there. It's something standard that's posted. Now we just transitioned, as said, to a new year. Hopefully we have that schedule posted. If not, it'll be posted soon, but there's no yard waste pickup right now.
what do we do for those residents who have those bags of yard waste sitting in front of the house? What do we do for them? Do we
They-
have someone to call directly to deal with that?
They can bring it right to the landfill themselves. The city enabled this program for 10 months out of the year. And going into mid-December, the city feels as if it's ample time for yard waste to be picked up, that people won't be doing much yard work into the months of December, mid-December, January, February, to be able to save money, so we don't do crews to go around the city picking up yard waste during those months. So they can certainly go to the landfill themselves and dispose of the material.
So we ask the resident to bring the yard waste themselves. That's why we ask them.
Yeah,
that?
the city, I don't think it's prudent for us to do year-round yard waste pickup, so there's kind of a cutoff, which is approximately mid-December, I believe, picks up sometimes in March. If you want, I don't think it's wise. My recommendation is not to ask us to do it during the months of the winter months. It's probably not a lot of activity going on. So we'd ask the council people to publicize that. We have that on the city's website. I think it's reasonable. Sometimes we can't address every issue, every bag. But that's certainly the exception.
Any other, Councilman Ferry, and then I'll go back to Councilwoman
It
Mazzulli.
was on the website that it was the week of December 19th was the last week. And it was on there months ago. So if somebody missed it, it's not really the city's fault at this point. So I had a guy in my neighborhood, I actually asked him to take the bags back into his yard, and he wasn't happy about it, but
I remember that.
Councilwoman Mazzulli?
Thank you. I just want to thank the city that they're going to be tracking stuff. I think that that's great that we're implementing a tracking system for complaints. And I want to make clear that I was not saying, Mr. DeCarlo does an amazing job. He's one man with a city of 82,000 people, like you said. My problem was directly with waste management and how they will miss a whole side of the road, because to those people who live on that side of the road, it doesn't matter if 79,990 people got their trash picked up, they care. So that was my only thing. The administration is great whenever I contact them. I am annoying and I contact everybody all the time. The problem was with waste management because we have a big contract with them. And throughout the pandemic, we fined them, and they've had this contract for I don't know how long. I know we're not going to be doing this ourselves, but it's kind of like monopolized, so they can do whatever. Thank you.
Through the chair, if it's reported to us that there is a miss, they will be there the next day to pick up.
Thank you, Director.
I have to say, with the exception, if it's on a Saturday, if you're at the tail end of the week, I think Weston Cranston, whereas if the trucks are filled up, we can't pick up until Monday. That would be should be the only exception. It happened to my house a couple of times and had some fun with Mr. DeCarlo about that, but he's.
I believe
We will send a truck out for one pickup if that's the case, if they mess up.
Thank you to the administration. I believe that everyone on council has spoken who wanted to, with the exception of Councilman Donegan. I believe you had your hand up, or you're all set. Okay, the administration's all set on this topic. Thank you. Next on the agenda, Councilwoman Mazzulli, you have emergency management liaisons and
Yep,
you can.
that's unnecessary because I put that in before.
Okay.
Councilwoman Vargas is the emergency management liaison. I just had the overnight parking permit. I just was seeing if there was an update. I guess last time we talked about this at a workshop, I guess it was going to be seen what the feasibility was to study the roads to see if this was something we could do. That's what Mr. Bernardo said. He's not here, so I can push this out to another time.
Does the administration have anything they would like to add to this issue of overnight parking permit update?
The city, we don't have the money funded, tens of thousands, I forget the number, 80,000, I forgot the number in discussion. We don't have the money to do that now, to assess. I think we should bring it to fruition, to be very concise, to see what the directive is, than just do a survey, come back and spend many tens of thousands of dollars for consideration. I think it should be tighter.
No,
with the
my question
request.
was just, I think that, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was to just say how much it might cost to do the study so that he could say, if it, council, it will cost $27,000 to do this study to see if this is even feasible. And we don't have the money for that. It was just, they were gonna give a number, someone that he had, that he knew.
From a discussion with Mr. Bernardo, who's pretty good. I believe I recall something in the vicinity of $80,000. Let's say 50 to 100,000, if that gives you a ballpark. It's not 10 or 20 or 30.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all I needed.
Any other council members wish to have any discussion on this? Councilwoman Jermaine?
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Council Winsley, to put this in the communication. So as you all know, this is something that really close to my heart. This issue with overnight parking. I received a letter, 2 letters from resident. And I think for me, it's a waste of time to even think wasting money to go to feasibility of overnight parking. That's my opinion. It's waste money to even envision to do that. Because the problem is simple, really simple. We have other cities that has parking and they do not have ban. And not everyone need overnight parking. It's just a few people who've been suffering over and over for lack of parking. So I am not for wasting money to do a study. I don't think we need study to do that. It's just a matter of passing ordinance to require someone who need a parking can have it. Someone who do not have driveway to have a parking. Most of people have, but in certain area, people who need to park overnight do not. So I don't think we need to go around, go on circle in circle because we don't want to do it. And we look for any little thing to make it a big thing. That's my opinion. So we need to allow overnight parking for people we need in the city, period. We don't need to waste taxpayer to do study. Study for what? That's my opinion.
Thank you. At this time, I would just like to acknowledge that we did have a workshop as a council. This is as simplistic as it sounds of an issue. It's clearly not, because if it were, this problem would have been solved years ago. But we as a council body are taking on this issue and looking to find a resolution along with the assistance of the administration, because it's going to take all of us to try and come up with a solution that's going to hopefully please many, but nothing is going to satisfy all, and we understand that. And part of that, taking that on, Attorney Angel has done some work with input from council members in the workshop. And if he could maybe give us an update as to where that stands, that would be helpful. Thanks.
Based on the last council discussion on this, and the recommendation to have this heard in a workshop, you'll have an ordinance for you in February, and a workshop can be scheduled for the full council to meet and do as it pleases with an amendment or construction of the ordinance, policy-wise, what studies they want or whatever else they want to do. But that will happen in February.
Thank you. Next on the agenda this evening is Councilwoman Jermaine. You have a couple of items up. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Council President. I have 2 items in the agenda. It's the first one is a discussion about sidewalk safety I said in Ward 2, and I think many of our area in the city may have the same issue with sidewalk safety. So thank you, Mr. Lima, for showing that. So during the course of the election, I was working, knocking doors, and that's when I realized how our sidewalk are unsafe. We live in a neighborhood where we want our children to be able to ride in their bike, play on the street, play on the, but I almost fell many times because our sidewalk is a disaster. And one thing I realized, we have those trees we have in the sidewalk that make uneven, that, and what do we do with that? And my question about sidewalk is, who is responsible of the sidewalk? So I would like to ask, because that's something I keep looking, I don't have the answer. Who is responsible of the sidewalk? Who is the owner of the sidewalk? So I would like to have this answer, because I have one of my residents close to my house that informed me of a situation where a young child, a boy, fell on the sidewalk, broke his arm, and sued the city. So my son fell on the sidewalk, broke his teeth. If we are working for improving the quality of life of our residents, that has to be a priority. For our sidewalk to be safe, our children or our elders. What about those people who are walking in those sidewalks cannot accommodate someone in a wheelchair, someone with a walker? So we are not helping our elders to go for a walk. We have speeding going on in our street. Now we have the sidewalk in such situation. So I have so many ideas in my head about sidewalk safety, but my first question is, I want to be able to have this confusion go away today with our legal, to know who is the owner of the sidewalk, and if something needs to be done, who is responsible. Thank you.
So Councilwoman Jermaine, I noticed in the communication, it says who is liable. So, okay. The short answer to your question is that the sidewalks are owned by the city unless there is a situation where there's a private development and the private development puts in the sidewalks the way they put in the roads, okay? But if you're talking about Oaklawn Avenue, you're talking about Pontiac Avenue, you're talking about Rolfe Street, you're talking about the neighborhoods, that's all city property, okay? Now, who is liable? Again, I'm going to give you the short answer. The short answer is, like any other property that the city maintains and controls and owns, the city. But there is an exception. If I live next to a sidewalk and I make changes or alterations to the sidewalk, if I plant flowers, if I plant grass you may see some of the sidewalks, there's like a strip of grass in the middle sometimes. If I put one of those little fences to decorate, well, someone slips and falls because I exercised control over that portion of the sidewalk. In all likelihood, I would be liable because I made changes, I made alterations, I exercised some control over the sidewalk. But that's the exception. The rule is it's city property. It's no different than a parking lot, no different than a road. No different than a set of stairs in a public building. City's responsibility.
Thank you, Solicitor. Now, my next question is, Mr. Lima, can you show for me? We see in the sidewalk a lot of trees, and we need the trees, okay? We need them. But like this picture here, you see how the concrete is lifted up. And you see the big tree right there. So this tree, so in terms of legal, that tree, is it the city property?
That's a good question. That tree looks to me like it's probably 75 to 100 years old. I don't know who planted it. Now, if it's the property owner who planted the tree, I guess the argument could be made that they're responsible for the damage it did to the sidewalk. I don't know who put that tree there.
Thank you. So now we have a program in the city that help residents who want to repair their sidewalk, right? So I'm thinking about how, if this city, is the sidewalk is the city property, and we have residents making, a contribution, or mostly it's the 50-50-50. That's what the rule says, 50-50. Am I right? Am I right, Rico? It's a 50-50 for the program sidewalk. You don't know?
Councilwoman Jermaine, this was discussed in Public Works. I know you had a previous engagement and you weren't able to attend, but I might suggest that this conversation maybe continue into Public Works, where you can get answers to those questions with Director Bernardo being present at that time. I think that might be a good idea if you're so inclined.
I agree with you, because I have so many other questions. Thank you. So I'm gonna stop here. If anyone have any question regarding this.
Thank you. As for, you had a second item update on Budlong Pool Project. Is that an item also you'd like to continue to Public Works for discussion, as I believe it was previously slated for that as well?
Yes, I think I have many letters that was sent to me during the week after an article where the mayor talked about Budlong Pool. And I have a lot of people that express disappointment, frustration, myself included. I have many questions about it as well. So as to the update, how much it costs to, because we do not have a number. We know we have a grant and we don't know how much money we can have from the ARPA. We know we have a resolution. So I have a lot of questions as it's getting late. So I think I'm going to refer it to the finance or public works.
For Public Works, for the update on Budlong Pool Project and the sidewalk safety, would you like to continue those both to
I
Public
would like
Works?
to continue those as well. Thank you.
If it's okay with the Chair of Public Works, if Rosalba can add those to the agenda for this upcoming Public Works meeting, that'd be great.
Thank you, Council President.
Thank you. Now, one order of business that I want to go back to, Councilman Donegan, as Chair of the Finance Committee, an attachment and a link made something a little unclear. So just for cleanup of the record, at the finance meeting as the chair, you and the Finance Committee continued the approval of the tax interest waivers. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay,
Yes, that is correct.
All right, I, just out of an abundance of caution, if you could take that item and maybe we can have a motion to continue that for the record to the next finance committee meeting as it came out of committee. As to the approval of the tax interest waivers.
Are we approving or are we continuing that to the next?
You are continuing with the recommendations to approve the tax interest waiver approvals.
I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Any discussion? Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mazzulli,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilman Donegan,
Yes.
Councilman Campiano,
Yes.
Councilman Paplaskas, Council Vice President Vargas.
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Yes. Next, as we voted to take the agenda out of order, right now we will go to the audit committee and I will give the floor to Councilman Donegan for the audit committee.
Thank you. Before I go any further, I don't think it would be fair to not acknowledge the work that Councilman Robert Ferry did as finance chair for the past 2 years and as the chair of the audit committee to get that committee back up and running. I don't think it had met in five years before that. I was going to say a decade. I thought it had been even longer. So I want to just thank you on behalf of the council, on behalf of residents of Cranston for all the work that you did, as well as I know Budget Auditor DeMayo was instrumental in that, as well as, help from our legal counsel and the administration director Zadelis as well. So, but to Councilman Ferry, thank you for all that you did. It shouldn't go unrecognized.
Thank you.
With that, we'll welcome a representative from Markham LLP to provide the presentation for the audit of the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022. This was continued from the December meeting. And members of the council, I believe I received the presentation and comments earlier this afternoon, and moments later, I appreciate Rosalba for forwarding that to the council. So copies should be available digitally as well as physically handouts here at the clerk's desk. But sir, great. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to be present tonight. Again, this follows up our meeting in mid-December with the audit committee where we discussed audit planning, the status of the audit at that point in time. Substantially all the field work had been done. There were a few remaining items. Finance Director Zadelis and the administration team did work to provide us with those last pieces. We did exchange some questions back and forth. We have been able to complete our reconciliation process, and today we've continued to circulate more finalized drafts of the numbers, which were included with what was sent today. Our team is continuing to work on review of the note disclosures and putting the entire annual financial report together, which we're scheduled to issue by next Tuesday to be in accordance with the state's extended due date of January 31st. We did prepare a brief presentation. It's the colored item that has been circulated. We are in the process of doing the final uniform guidance of the compliance audit of the federal programs, which was again the result of finalizing the schedule of expenditure of federal awards that was presented. That report is due by March 31st, and we'll be pleased to return to the council at that point in time and discuss any findings with that or any final observations and recommendations that we'll make as a result of the audit process. Our intention in the next week is to issue our audit opinion on the city's annual financial statements. Again, to meet the state extended due date of January 31st. Within the package, I'm on page 3 now to talk a little bit about the city's general fund. Total fund balance for the general fund increased by just under $443,000 for the year. The unassigned fund balance, some people call it the rainy day fund, at June 30th of 2022 amounted to 14 million, just under $237,000. It represents 4.5% of the general fund's budget expenditures, slightly below the target of 5% that's set, but certainly it's a significant rebound from the previous year. In the June of 21 financial statements, the city did report a significant amount of its fund balance as non-spendable, as it was represented by a receivable from the Internal Service Fund, which did not have the ability to repay that amount. The subsequent year's funding of the Internal Service Fund for Healthcare in the 22-23 year, which has been represented to us, has certainly brought that fund back to a break-even position, so that amount is no longer required to be shown as non-spendable in the general fund. That's an increase of just about $4 million in the undesignated, in addition to the $442,000 of current year operating results that the city had. Certainly on an operation the size of the city, a $442,000 increase in fund balance is largely break even, but that's the design. So, when communities see a big number there, there are certainly questions, certainly this year. The city operated within its appropriations and within the plan that was set forth. Moving to the next page, the school general fund, it's the second largest major fund within the city. For the fiscal year, the fund balance increased by just over $200,000. The total fund balance is just under 8 million at June 30th of 2022. All has been earmarked for educational purposes. There is a portion of that is reported as non-spendable solely because it's held as a claims deposit by the fund administrator for the school department's healthcare plan. It's not available for disbursement. It's held by a third party. The next page within the presentation does give a chart of fund balances of the city's governmental funds. Again, showing the general fund, the school unrestricted fund. This year, the school bond, there was a $51 million anticipation note, which was issued during the year. About just over $15.5 million has been spent. That currently is shown as a negative fund balance until permanent financing is issued to replace an anticipation note. The other governmental funds is a conglomeration of all funds that don't meet the definition of major. At the end of the year, they ended with just under $14.4 million of fund balance available to fund programs at the city's discretion. You can see on the bottom line on that chart, you can see the changes in fund year over year. The table on page 6 does show the combined fund balance of the city and school department for the last 5 years. And again, in that 2022 column, you can see the blue representing the undesignated fund balance rebounding significantly from where that was a year ago and in the prior audit report. On the next page of the presentation, we did include a summary of the revenues and expenditures and changes in fund balance. Again, for the city's governmental funds, the two on the left-hand side being the most significant, the general fund and the school unrestricted fund. You can see where the general fund recognized revenues of just over $240 million for the fiscal year. Expended currently about $142 million on current operations as well as debt service, and then transferred out to other funds, just about $97.5 million, the majority of that going to Cranston Public Schools. Shown as a source in their column directly to the right. Cranston Public Schools expenditures were about $181.4 million for the year. They did raise just under $84 million of external funding, state aid, tuitions, and other charges to support their operations. Again, bringing them at the end of the year with a slight increase in fund balance of $200,000, certainly operating again within their appropriated allocations. When we look at the budget to actual comparison for the city's general fund, total revenues were above budget by $965,000. Again, certainly on an operation the size of the city, a $965,000 variance is certainly well within reason. Property taxes came in just about $743,000 above what was anticipated. Permits and licenses, again, were above budget by about $912,000. Most of our communities are seeing similar results. with the home refinancing boom that was taking place during that fiscal year. There were a lot of taxes that were caught up as well as recording fees and the like for recording mortgages. So there were some other, areas of the budget that had small, positive and negative variances as well, but certainly nothing of significance to comment on. Moving to page 9, expenditures in the city's general fund were $712,000 above appropriated amounts. There were 5 departments that had variances that were above $100,000, and we've listed them here. Again, certainly nothing that wasn't explained as a one-time item or a change in operations that impacted just the current year. Moving to slide 10, the school department results of operations. Revenues are above budget by just under $1,150,000, largely due to more federal funding and more tuition revenue than anticipated. And expenditures were below the appropriated amounts by $241,000 for the year. Moving on, the city does operate business type activities. Those are not funded by tax dollars. Those are funded by charges for services. The wastewater or sewer fund is a major fund by definition. At the end of the fiscal year, it ended with a positive net position of $70 million. Again, a small increase from the prior year, just about $420,000 increase in its net position. In addition to the wastewater operation, the school lunch fund and the ice rink, those are both operated on the same basis, although they don't meet the definition of major fund. Collectively, they had positive increases in net position, and all enterprise funds generated positive cash flow from operations, again, being self-sufficient, supporting their own activities. We have a few slides as we wrap up. The city police and fire pension plan ended the year for financial statement purposes at a 24.38% funding, down from 27.25 the previous year. Largest impact of that was the investment performance. All of our clients are seeing their pension funds take a hit valuation wise from the investments. Nothing, no surprises there, or nothing that is really within the control of the city. Certainly the city has made all its required contributions at the actuarially determined amounts for the year. At the end of the year, the city is recording a $215 million net pension liability, where the obligation to pensioners, both current and future, exceeds the current assets in that fund by that amount. Certainly funding the annual contributions at the actuarially determined amounts are designed to address that and resolve that, so there's no going concern issue with the plan, as long as those contributions are continue to be made, which we're certainly assured they will be. We have a brief slide on post-employment benefits, health benefits and the like for retirees. The police and fire plan has a liability of just under $40 million. Again, its funding percentage dropped during the year, again, largely due to investment returns. The school department has a $12 million OPEB liability at June 30th. And again, their funding status remained about the same. Certainly on the other post-employment benefits, there's more estimates and assumptions that go into that liability. Certainly for a pension plan, the biggest variable or assumption is rate of return on assets. With post-employment benefits, you're looking at rate of return on assets plus the healthcare cost trend rate, which really is difficult to pin down, put it that way. There's no set payment stream on this. It's really paid through premiums on a year-by-year basis. Most plans are on a pay-as-you-go basis and are not generating sufficient assets to really be considered self-sufficient. The city is in no different condition than anyone else. Again, as I mentioned, when we issue the report, we'll issue a communication to those charged with governance, the city council, as well as the school committee when their financial statements are issued. That will summarize what our responsibilities under generally accepted auditing standards were, any difficulties we had, any delays, which we did not have anything significant. We did not have any disagreements over the application of accounting principles and the like. Overall, observations and recommendations as a result of the audit and the Uniform Guidance Compliance audit, again, will be issued at the time of that audit opinion before March 31st. And we'll certainly be pleased to come back to the council and meet with the audit committee as well during that wrap-up stage on that, and discuss any questions they may have on on those communications. So, at that point, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Sure.
I don't know if this question is directed to you or to Director Zidelis. Intergovernmental revenue came in at $1.1 million below what was anticipated. What's the cause of that?
Through the chair, that's primarily caused by certain federal reimbursements that are accounted for in the general fund, timing wise. Predominantly some COVID-related expenses that the city has applied for that has yet to receive the proceeds from the federal government.
So it's money that we still may get?
Through the chair to the counselor, yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Any other members of council have questions? Good evening. Sure, and I, actually, before I have my questions, I'll have, our auditor and budget analyst, David DeMayo, speak. Thanks.
Thank you. Just a few clarifications on some of the discussions now that the numbers are here.
Sure.
The question was asked because in our current budget or the current order period, we had $7.8 million of opera money that supplemented lost revenues.
Correct.
Because we have the surplus, it's an understanding that that money will stay in the, as we say rainy day fund and cannot be put back in the opera fund because that's the flow of progress. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Previous year's audit fiscal 2021, our internal service fund was at 5.5, almost $5.6 million as deficit. In the current audit period, it's coming in at 6.9, about $1.3 million of an increase.
Correct.
The funding that's in the current budget that we're on, which is fiscal June 30th, 2023, has $19 million of opera money, included $7 million of one-time funding for that. So going forward in the current period, we're actually at about a $51,000 profit, not knowing if there'll be additional expenditures or that will have a better run rate per se with the health insurance. So.
Correct. I think I agree with that. The deficit position in that fund, like I said, was 6.95 million. If 7 million goes into that, it brings it back to the positive by $50,000. Certainly at the end of next year's audit, it will really be reported what that current year result was. If there's positive results in the health fund, if working rates are adequate to cover costs, that 50,000 will be sustained or grow. If they're not, it will change at that point in time.
Okay, and the increase of the 1.3 was because the run rate was not as good as we expected it to be for the health claims?
Yeah, claims exceeded the contributions to the fund for the year.
All right, my only last question, just as we have limited time, will the audit issuance date be in compliance with the extension for the Auditor General?
Yes, we're working diligently to issue that by Tuesday, end of this day. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Councilwoman Renzulli.
Thank you. Through the president, just asking if we just received this today, if we have questions going forward, who should we direct them to? Do we email them to Mark? I'm just looking for a contact so that I can read through this line by line. I haven't had the chance to do that. Thank you.
Yeah. With respect to future questions with respect to the actual audit, I would direct them to the finance chair and go through the finance committee to address those questions and concerns.
Thank you, President.
Councilman Ferry.
I'll do that. I'll go through the chair. Future questions.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Wilkinson. We just received this today after 4 o'clock, and those of us who work didn't have any time to, digest really this, didn't have much time, I should say, to digest this slideshow presentation, although it's not the full report. I appreciate your time and work on this. I had a question with respect to on page 8, with the department being above budget, $876,000. Is that just general departments running over? Is there a specific department that was substantial? I know you gave some percentages on page 9, but like, for example, the city clerk's office being 28%, but that overall budget is minuscule compared to the fire or police. So the percentages aren't as telling as I think that they could be if, so any insight from
Those were
you on that?
departmental revenues. They're made up of a variety of things that are collected at the department level.
Okay.
We could certainly, through the audit committee, we can certainly recap what those are line by line at a future meeting.
Okay. But you don't have those ready yet, but they'll be in your full report.
I mean, the details there, I don't have it with me. I don't have it off the top of my head what the details are.
Okay. Okay, so the revenues were above budget.
Right, yeah, this slide is here all on revenues.
And the below budget of the 232,000, was there any particular department more than another?
No,
How
that's
much
another category. It's really a.
Okay.
it's an
Is the
aggregation.
administration, Director Zadelis, do you have any insight on that?
There were two components that you were just speaking to relative to the clerk's office. That was, I believe, on page 9, the 28%. That was one estimated expense primarily. It appears to be fees we turn over to the state that are collected through the clerk's office. That was over budget. But those are estimates that as they're building the budget, they don't, quite honestly is an estimate predicated on previous years. So that was not troublesome. On the revenue side, the other one that was the other category is a collective catch-all. And we can get you a report budget to actual, which makes up multiple departments. But as Mr. Wilkinson said, it's a compilation of many revenue accounts, but we can get you that information.
And then the other question I have is just on page 14, with respect to the funded ratio, what determines what that ratio is set to be? Because it appears that it's decreased dealing with the OPEB. And I just want to make sure that we're on track as to where we need to be when I'm seeing the contribution decrease.
The funded percentage is really a measurement of the extent that assets are set aside in a trust fund versus the value of the liability for future benefits that is out there. And again, it's the liability for future benefits is really nothing you can budget for. It's the actuaries come up with that, and that healthcare cost trend rate. If they use 5% one year versus 10% the next year, it swings, and there's no amortization on this like a mortgage where you can say after 20 years, I'm going to be fully paid. This is really an accounting measurement of what that exposure is, but there's no set payment terms on how it's going to be retired.
Okay. All right. I don't have anything else. If that raise any other questions from council members or. Okay. I want to thank the members of the audit committee for their time and investment, Councilman Donegan as chair and Councilman Ferry as well for his time and commitment. And we'll be having more discussions in the future. Thanks.
Thanks.
Next on the agenda this evening is the introduction of new matters before council. I would suggest we have a motion to take these all as a block.
Second.
Okay. And to refer them to committee as a block. Okay.
So move.
In a second.
Second.
Okay. Clerk, please take the roll. Any discussion first? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mazzulli.
Yes.
Councilwoman Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilman Donegan, Councilman Campiano,
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas,
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Yes. Next on the agenda is next on the agenda, just for informational purposes, is the council rules, the adoption of the council rules being deferred to the regularly scheduled council meeting in February 2023. And going back to page 6 of the agenda with the miscellaneous business on the clerk's desk, we have a few items, and I would suggest that perhaps with respect to the 2023 city council and committee meeting schedule, the 2023 municipal court schedule, and the reappointment of John Skorupski as tree warden, as well as the letter of engagement for the hiring of council attorney Stephen Angel, that we have a motion to accept those on the record.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilman Ferry.
Yes.
Councilwoman Mazzulli. Councilwoman Jermaine.
Yes.
Councilman Donegan. Councilman Campiano.
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas.
Yes.
Council President Reno.
Yes. And next and finally on the agenda, we have the interview of the 2 finalist candidates for the position of the city clerk. Before we have the candidates come up to the podium and speak, I would like for Attorney Angel to address the issue of why we are in this format as opposed to executive session.
Thank you, Madam President. The Open Meetings Act does not provide an exception for the council to go into executive session for interview purposes or any public body for that matter. Person would have to be hired and it would have to be a matter of job performance or some other job-related function for that to be discussed in executive session. And obviously, the employee would have the option to have it closed or public. In this instance, the individuals are not employees. So that whatever sort of discussion is going to be had about these positions must be done in public.
Thank you to Attorney Angel. Now, with respect to the candidates for the city clerk position, I would ask council members to be thoughtful of the time while this is an important role and try and keep our questions, if any, concise, and try to do this so that we have one single set of questions so that we're not going out around the room repeatedly this evening. I would ask for Tracy Nelson as a candidate to come forward and just introduce yourself briefly. Thank you very much.
You can hear me? Yes. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak before you. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, I began my career in municipal government about 20 years ago. Oh, okay. Understood. I get it. Yes, absolutely. I apologize. So I began my career in municipal government nearly 20 years ago, following several years in the insurance industry. I've worked in various forms of government in varying capacities as a hired unionized assistant clerk, an elected town clerk, a council appointed town clerk, and presently as a hired non-union department director. I am a certified municipal clerk, close to achieving my master municipal clerk designation. I'm an active and respected member of the Rhode Island Town and City Clerks Association, as well as our regional and international associations. These affiliations provide me with a valuable network for municipal clerks. I am proficient in the Open Meetings Act and the Access to Public Records Act, participating annually in the Attorney General's Open Government Summit. I'm comfortable now navigating Rhode Island general laws, the General Assembly, testifying on legislation at committee hearings. If I don't know an answer, I will find it. Over the course of my career, I've served on multiple task forces and committees for previous secretaries of state, the Board of Elections, the General Assembly, and my professional associations. I have established positive working relationships on municipal, state, and federal levels. I'm a strong advocate of collaboration and bipartisanship. I have served successfully under both Democratic and Republican majority councils. The past president of my own council has consulted me regularly for institutional knowledge of the town and municipal government in general. I have 2 adult daughters and 2 granddaughters. I purchased my childhood home from my parents 7 years ago. I enjoy reading and writing. I've discovered that work-life balance is best achieved by employment in a municipality other than the one you live in. And one of my favorite quotes that applies to all areas of life is by Benjamin Franklin: "By failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail." I would like to thank the City Council for their consideration, and I'm confident that I'm an ideal candidate for the position of City Clerk, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have for me.
Thank you, Ms. Nelson.
Thank you.
And at this time, I'll take questions from council members. Councilman Campopiano.
Thank you. Thank you, Tracy, for being here today. A very impressive resume. I got a very simple question. Do you feel that you can I know the clerk's office is overburdened at this point. Do you feel you can step in on day one and perform your duties?
I mean, I would need some tutoring from Rose Alba, I'm sure, which would be the case, I would think with almost anyone who came into the job, because every municipality has their own rules, their own policies, their own software. So I would have a very strong foundation for that. But I would certainly look to Rose for guidance on Cranston's unique structure and policies and rules and procedures.
So there's nothing out of the ordinary that you would be encountering going into this position?
No.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Council Vice President Vargas.
Thank you. Good evening. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good. Question, in terms of, you served as a town clerk in Richmond, and up until 2016 that I see here on the resume. And then in October 2016, you moved on to the city of Newport to become the canvassing clerk. Can you walk me as to the reason why you kind of went in from town clerk to canvassing clerk as an election administrator and now would like to actually come back as a clerk?
Sure. So I was working in my hometown, and that presents its own challenges. But in a small town in particular, you handle everything from issuing dump stickers to licenses to vital records. But one of my favorite parts of the job was elections. So when the opportunity came to transition to focus solely on elections, I took that opportunity. It was a more lucrative position. But I'm finding that I miss a lot of the other things. I miss a little more variety in my day.
Thank you for that. And so just to kind of piggyback on that, if I may, variety in terms of obviously like additional responsibilities, is that what I'm?
And just variety in my day to day. So, in elections, everything centers around an election or voter registration, whereas in the clerk's office, you could come in 1 minute you could be, helping out with a marriage license, and the next minute you have to shift to preparing an agenda. So just a little more variety in my day-to-day performance.
If I can ask an additional question, Council President? Okay,
sure.
Ms. Nelson, the office and the clerk's office, and Rosalba may know this, right? We have a demographic, probably very much, well, somewhat similar, a little bit to City of Newport, but we are definitely, I would say, highly more diverse. And so we may have individuals coming to the city clerk's office with a language barrier, a need explanation and on there. Just curious in terms of, how would, you handle a person who comes in who has a language barrier and is not able to actually, I guess the customer service component of that, really.
Sure. So I'm not, fluent in any other language. I certainly would love to learn. It's a goal of mine to learn Spanish. But I've used Google Translate in dealing with customers in my office currently.
Thank you for that. And the other part of the question that I did actually have, my God, just had to lost stuff. Sorry, I just lost track, I
Okay.
think.
It's getting late.
Sorry, I'm turning it
Understandable.
down again. I apologize. I'll defer to any other council members for the time being until it comes back. Thank you.
Councilwoman Renzulli.
I did get to, I do have questions, but I did get to interview this candidate separately. So I want to defer to anyone else, but I did step out to get a drink, so I don't know if everyone already did that.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. So my questions are, when you transitioned to Newport, I'm sure there was a learning curve there because you're going from a clerk. You did some elections to all elections. Can you tell me, are you a fast learner? Can you explain how quickly you're able to transition into things? Because that's going to be important here. It moves quick. In
So-
Cranston, I don't know. how it
So
moves
the
in-
transition from a municipal clerk that handled everything, including elections, to just elections wasn't that difficult, but it was different because I went from having only, a couple of precincts and voter population of about 6,000 to having now 9 precincts and a voting population of about 16,000. So that was the biggest transition. Just basically studying my homework, going out and, viewing the sites that I needed to see. But a lot of it was just homework, research.
Can you tell us the strengths that you get from being part of the clerks associations that I know you're associated with? Because I'm just making an assumption that you can get a lot of good information there, a lot of knowledge that you can't get in other places. So could you just tell us what the
Sure,
strengths you
it's
get from that?
basically the municipal clerk's equivalent of phone a friend. If I don't know the answer, if my staff doesn't know the answer, or someone in-house doesn't know the answer, I certainly have a pool of resources available to me that would either know the answer or know where to get it.
And this is through the council president to the administration. Are we still utilizing someone who's bilingual within the building to go to other departments? Or do we just use translation services now? This is just kind of a question, but it is applicable. Oh. Okay, excellent. So you do have that. That's reassuring.
Perfect.
All right, thank you. That's all I have.
Just one more.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Just one more question. There's 9 council members. And so we might often ask and be requesting whether it's citations or someone who may be going through establishing a business within the city and going through guidelines. How do you handle priority in terms of the council, knowing that, again, there's 9 of us, including obviously the council president, and that communication in itself?
Well, I'd have to look at the substance of the request and see the urgency of it, and then prioritize it from there.
Any other questions from council? Councilwoman Jermaine.
Thank you, ma'am, for coming for us this evening. How you describe the role of a clerk?
The role of a clerk? Oh, basically, you're the front line, you're the gatekeeper to the city or town. You are the keeper of the records. It's one of the oldest roles that exists. And I think it's so important. It's vital. It's part of our laws. You can't just not have a city or town clerk. And that's for a reason. I think, you're there to serve the council, each and every member of the council, but you're also there to serve all the residents, the business owners, the citizens. I think the role of municipal clerk is extremely vital.
Can you give an example of one thing that you do as a clerk precisely?
One thing that I do as a clerk precisely, take the minutes of the meeting, write resolutions, issue licenses. There's a lot of aspects to the role.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilwoman Marzulli.
Thank you. I just have one more question that just got triggered by Councilwoman Jermaine. So you mentioned serving the council, serving the residents. It's also a position that serves the administration. You're kind of in between. So I imagine, but I'm unsure if that's exactly how it was in Richmond. Can you tell us if it was the same way where you are a director, but you also work for the council? So there's going to be a balance. And are you comfortable with, keeping that balance and how you plan to maintain that?
Yes, I mean, I've worked, as I said, in multiple forms of government. When I began in Richmond, we didn't have an administrator or manager. It was strictly the council. So I worked most closely with the council presidents. And then we finally wrote a charter in my town and we hired an administrator. But I was still an elected clerk at that time, so I still reported directly to the council president. But of course, I worked alongside the administrator in order to, serve the needs of the residents. So I would imagine this would work the same.
And you may have mentioned this when I stepped out, so excuse me, just tell me that you did if I did. This role handles probate, being a probate clerk as well.
Okay.
And, every couple of years, we also get new probate judges. So it's a big part of the role, as far as I understand it. Rosalba can correct me or someone can correct me if I'm wrong. Do you have experience with that? And if not, are you comfortable with learning how to do it?
So I handled probate in Richmond, so I haven't done it in, about 6 years, but I have the foundation there. I would need to just kind of be brought up to speed on any changes. I know the state forms are available online, so they're easily accessible. The laws are online. So I would just need to be brought up to speed on the current practices and.
Okay, but you did do it. You did it in Richmond.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, ma'am.
That's all I need to know. Thank you. I'm done.
And last call, any other questions from council members?
Sure, I'll ask one more question if I may.
Sure.
Just disagreements. Can you just tell me how you handle disagreements within your office and just complex problems in general?
Sure. I mean, anytime there's disagreement, you kind of need to, whether it's between you and someone else or two other people that you need to, negotiate. I think the most important thing is to just kind of listen to everybody's point of view, everybody's stance, because a lot of times the disagreement is over a lack of understanding or some type of breakdown in communication. So if you can get to the root of that, then it's a lot easier to solve those disagreements.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Nelson. I had the pleasure of sitting down with you in the smaller subcommittee, going through candidates. And so I appreciate the time that you took then as well to answer questions. And I appreciate your patience this evening since the meeting went rather long, but I'm sure with your experience as a clerk, you understand that's outside of our control. And
yes, ma'am.
Hopefully you'll, be up for the task if you are in this position.
All right.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone.
Next this evening is Miss Sophia Milham. I hope I didn't butcher your last name. And the same applies if you just would like to introduce yourself. Thank you for taking the time this evening. I apologize for the late night, and then we'll take council member questions from there.
Okay, thank you so much. You guys can hear me? Okay. Hi, my name is Sophia Millam, and I am a current resident of Cranston. I moved to the city about 3 years ago, purchased a home. I have two small children who attend public school in the city. We are incredibly happy to move here. I currently work as a paralegal at Pannone, Lopes, Devereaux, and O'Gara. I work in the alternative dispute resolution team, mostly overseeing the there's a large case in California dealing with mental health treatment in prisons there. Before that, I worked for 10 years in the city and county of San Francisco, 4 years of which I worked in the city attorney's office in the Child and Family Services Division. And then for 6 years, I worked in the retirement system, which serves 71,000 retirees and active members. I really love my current job, but I would also love to get back to working in the public sector. I loved working in the city. I love being part of the city. I love learning all about how everything runs in the city. I feel like this job would also allow for that.
Thank you. Any questions from council members at this time? Councilman Campopiano.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Sophia, for coming tonight. And I'm going to ask basically the same question. Your resume is very, very impressive, but do you feel that you can step into the role as clerk on the first day? I know the clerk's office is challenged, and I was curious if you feel you can come into that.
Yeah, I feel like I do. I mean, as always, institutional knowledge is your best resource when you start a new job, the people who are already working there. I am a very fast learner. I have had a wide variety of different kinds of jobs, and I've loved learning how to do all of them. And I feel like that would not be a problem for me.
Any other council members? Council Vice President Vargas.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask you pretty much the same questions that I actually asked the previous candidate, because I actually believe in being, having some equity along those lines, right? And I think the first one was pretty much why this position. It seems like you've kind of answered that already. So if we can actually do, how do you prioritize, again, knowing that there's, you probably heard my earlier question, but there's 9 members of us on the council.
Similar to the prior candidate, you would, review the request, determine its priority. But I think also as you learn the job, you learn the rhythm of priority and when things need to be done. That takes a little finesse and a little time in the position. And also you can ask people, how fast do you need this, right?
Thank you for that. I think the other question that I did ask the other candidate as well was in terms of, and I'll ask you is, again, we have a very diverse city. Clearly, you must, you're probably a witness of that as well, living here in the city. And how do you handle if there was someone who came in and there was a language barrier coming to the city clerk's office?
Right. Well, working in San Francisco, which is a very diverse city, many of our employees did not speak English as their first language. So, usually you have to know what your resources are where you work, who can speak the language that they prefer to speak in, and use those resources. I worked also at an immigration law firm, and I had to screen lots and lots of telephone calls from people who did not speak English at all. And there are ways to figure it out and get people the help and information that they are requiring.
And the other question was in terms of disagreements, right, within the office.
Yeah.
How do you handle disagreements amongst staff?
Usually when I have had to deal with that, it's best to address them head on and directly and have a conversation. If that's impossible, then you call in other resources such as human resources, other management, anyone else who can help. But I usually try to deal with it all head on.
Thank you. It's getting kind of late, so I'm sorry. Did I ask about the how you prioritize? And if
Yes,
not,
you did. You did.
sorry, I have my little things on here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilwoman Jermaine.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for being here. So I I would like to ask the same question as well, the question I asked previously. What is the duty of a clerk? I asked the question. And if there is one thing you can give concise.
Right. I would say you would manage all of your roles and responsibilities, right? And here it's probate and records and meetings and being able to project manage all of those various duties would be your role.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilwoman Renzulli.
Hi, thank you for being with us and staying so late. Similarly to questions I asked before, I might have to edit the question a little bit, but your transition, you have a very impressive resume, and I'd like you to describe the transitions between the different jobs that you did and how you adjusted to them.
Okay, so when I moved from the city attorney's office to the retirement system, those were two completely very different jobs. I had very little experience in benefits administration. It was a whole new language. So, I started and I sat with all the various departments that me and my boss oversaw, sat with people who worked in them, from our clerks all the way up to management, to see how that all worked. I also did a lot of research learning how to apply San Francisco as a charter-based city. Sorry, it's a little late. It's a charter-based city. So reviewing all of the charter language that applied anytime there was an election, there was always some change to all of our retirement benefits and how they were administered. So keeping up with that, learning the basis, and also learning from all the people who had been there. As you know, in city government, people work there 20, 30 years, and really that's your best resource for learning your job.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I would say that our clerk has been here for a long time. If she were to retire, it would be, I don't know that the people in that office have been there that long.
Yeah.
So, I know you said you're a quick learner, but it has to be like,
Yeah,
real quick.
no, I understand. Yeah, that's
so my other question, I think I know, because you haven't been a clerk. I don't know if have you done any legal work in probate? Because you have a
I have
legal background.
not, but
Okay.
I actually am very confident in my legal skills, as I've been a paralegal, legal secretary, and did a lot of the legal work at the retirement system for over 20 years now.
And what was the other question I asked? Oh, you work for the council, you work for the residents in a very customer service oriented position. And then you're also a member of the administration. So can you tell me how you would foresee yourself keeping the balance to kind of keep everyone happy? Because it's kind of challenging.
I understand that role. At the retirement board, I served the board, I served our members, I served the public, I served the executive director and the deputy executive director. So I had to balance all of those roles and all of those people requesting information from me. And I loved it. I think you learn how to communicate and how to prioritize all of those demands that are put on you in that kind of position.
I think my final question is, if you were to be named the city clerk, do you foresee yourself becoming part of clerks associations and getting within that network? Because I think a legal background is, obviously it's advantageous, but there's separate things about being a clerk that's just, you won't know unless you're with clerks and around clerks.
I totally understand. I would be open to all of that. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions from council members? No? Councilman Donegan.
Not a question, but just for the record, as some have mentioned, I had the opportunity to sit in on a subcommittee to meet and interview both of you, as well as several other candidates. I was able, afforded the opportunity to ask questions there. I appreciate both of you for your interest, for the expansive backgrounds that you bring to the table. And I know that whichever way we as a body go, we're going to be in great hands in the city. But seriously, thank you both for your time and for being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Milham. And similarly, I can't thank you enough for your patience. And if you are the one that is in this gets the clerk's position, you will be used to these late evenings from time to time as well. So I thank you. And we will be in touch through HR Director Perillo with respect to when we'll make our final decision. We'll have to have another meeting scheduled. Thank you. At this time, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We're done. Good.